Chapter 287. Under Lu Haochang's wrath, Crown Prince Lu Longji suffered a great loss, but what was more important was his reputation. It was needless to say what kind of treatment a crown prince would receive after committing a foolish act and a grave mistake. However, this matter was not over yet. Lu Longji was Lu Haochang's biological son and the crown prince of the Eastern Qi imperial court. He had to be punished for his mistake. As for Jianghu Yuan, he had to pay with his life for his mistake. Lu Haochang said coldly, "Zhang Rang." A tall middle-aged eunuch in a dark green brocade robe said in a low voice, "I'm here." Jianghu Yuan has gone too far this time. Does he really think that the Lu royal family doesn't dare to kill him? For so many years, I can pretend that I didn't see what he did in the dark, but he should never have interfered in the internal affairs of the imperial family. He should be killed for trying to touch the foundation of the imperial family. His memorial arch has been erected for so many years, and the Lu royal family has tolerated it for so long. We have not let the Jiang family down. Now that the Jiang family has dug their own grave, they can't blame anyone else. Zhang Rang, take the people of the Front Palace Department and cooperate with the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army to kill the Prince of Annal's residence. Whoever brings Jianghu Yuan's head will be rewarded handsomely. What Jianghu Yuan had done all these years was like a fly, so disgusting that people wanted to swat him to death. But although flies were annoying, they were not fatal. The so-called guests and hangers-on that Jianghu Yuan had recruited over the years might be strong in the eyes of ordinary people, but they were vulnerable in the eyes of the Eastern Qi imperial court. But this time, Jianghu Yuan's involvement in the internal power struggle of the Eastern Qi imperial family had really touched Lu Haochang's reverse scale, so this time, Jianghu Yuan must die. At this time, Lu Longguang suddenly said, "Father, some of my men are also in the Ji State Prefecture, they can also share your burden." Lu Haochang frowned and said lightly, "Yes, if your men kill Jianghu Yuan, they will also be rewarded." As the emperor, he was even happy to see the infighting among his children. There was no need to say more about how cruel the royal family was. Almost every emperor was like raising a poisonous insect. Only the winner could sit on the throne. In the history of Eastern Qi, more than half of the emperors were not born as princes. In the past, Lu Haochang was just an ordinary member of the royal family. He had never experienced such cruel competition and slaughter, so his ability was slightly mediocre. Lu Haochang was aware of the conflict between the crown prince and the second prince. He also knew that all of his other sons who had some ability had ambitions and thoughts. However, he did not stop them. As long as his heirs didn't cause too much trouble and didn't offend his dignity as the emperor, Lu Haochang didn't intend to interfere. At that moment, Cheng Zhouhai, Zhong Ping, and Wang Qianping were in an inn in the Ji State Prefecture. At present, the few of them were in a complete stalemate. They clearly had a clue, but in the end, they couldn't investigate the case, nor could they not investigate it. Moreover, Chu Xiu and Chu Xiaoda hadn't returned for a day. God knew what they were doing. Even Cheng Zhouhai had some complaints about Chu Xiu. This time, Hall Master Guan had assigned Chu Xiu to lead the team. They felt that they had done their best. But now, Chu Xiu had disappeared halfway. What was going on? At this moment, Wang Qianping suddenly revealed a strange look in his eyes. He said, "The two of you, it's not that I want to say this, but Chu Xiu's actions are a little too excessive. Lord Hall Master gave the leader position to Chu Xiu, but now Chu Xiu has gone missing. What is going on?" Cheng Zhouhai narrowed his eyes and said, "Wang Qianping, what do you mean?" Wang Qianping sneered and said, "What I mean is that we can't help Chu Xiu take the blame for nothing. He isn't good at investigating cases, but we are. We have done everything we can for him. But now that we are faced with a difficult situation, this Chu Xiu has gone missing. According to the rules of the Guanzhong torture room, if the case is not solved and the reputation of the Guanzhong torture room is ruined, Chu Xiu will be punished. We can't do anything about it. Why don't we write a letter back to the Guanzhong torture room and report Chu Xiu to Hall Master Guan? If something goes wrong, Hall Master Guan can't blame us." Cheng Zhouhai frowned and looked at Wang Qianping. This guy was really sinister. Previously, he had been so calm in front of Chu Xiu, as if he didn't dare to provoke Chu Xiu. But now, he was playing this trick in the dark. If they really reported Chu Xiu in front of Hall Master Guan, it would make Chu Xiu seem to be headstrong and self-opinionated. Finally, it would cause the case to be unable to be solved. Not only would Chu Xiu's reputation in the Guanzhong torture room plummet, but it would also cause Chu Xiu to be punished by Guanxiu. Guanzhong torture room had its own rules. In other sects, talents like Chu Xiu would definitely be given some preferential treatment. But in the Guanzhong torture room, if you do well, you will be rewarded, and if you do wrong, you will be punished. It was that simple. Zhong Ping said faintly, I won't do this kind of secretly slandering others, and I'm also too lazy to do it. If you want to go, then go. This time, he didn't contribute much to Qiu Zhenxing's case. He was only good at killing people. Actually, it didn't matter to him whether the case was completed or not. Cheng Zhouhai also looked indifferent. Wang Qianping, I've heard about what you did in the Guanzhong torture room. Don't play this trick here. If you want to stab people in the back, you can go. I won't stop you, but don't think about seducing me to go with you. Although Cheng Zhouhai didn't think he was a gentleman, he really couldn't stab people in the back like this. Moreover, he didn't want to incur hatred with Chu Xiu because of such a small matter. Even if Chu Xiu really didn't complete the case, which caused his reputation to be damaged and he was punished by the hall master, Chu Xiu was still Chu Xiu. His strength was still there. Although the Guanzhong torture room valued merit, at the end of the day, strength was the guarantee. With Chu Xiu's current talent and strength, he would definitely become a torture officer or a leader of the arrest department in the future. Why bother to offend Chu Xiu for such a small matter? Not all the cases handled by the Guanzhong torture room could be solved. There were also many unsolved cases. Cheng Zhouhai could still afford that little punishment. At least, it wasn't worth it to offend Chu Xiu because of this little punishment. Seeing these two people's attitude, Wang Qianping was a little surprised. Because from the past few days of contact, this Chu Xiu didn't seem to be very close to Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping. In the end, they actually chose to stand on Chu Xiu's side. It was really strange. However, Wang Qianping didn't want to care so much now. At this time, if he didn't hit Chu Xiu while he was down, when he returned to the Guanzhong torture room, his master Yin Batong wouldn't let him off. Yin Batong's previous disciple, Li Tianhao, was crippled by Chu Xiu. Since then, Yin Batong hated Chu Xiu to the core. This time, Wang Qianping followed Chu Xiu to carry out the mission. His master had personally instructed him to find an opportunity to cause trouble for Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu remained unharmed throughout the journey, it would be fine. But now, he didn't mind hitting Chu Xiu while he was down and stabbing him in the back. Wang Qianping sneered. Alright, you guys are of high moral standing. If you don't want to complain, then I'll do it. Hall Master Guan is very clear about rewards and punishments. I'd like to see if you guys will also suffer when Chu Xiu is punished. At this time, the door was suddenly pushed open. Chu Xiu's figure stepped into the inn. Immediately, Wang Qianping's mouth opened wide. He almost swallowed the words he just said. Chu Xiu's face was gloomy. Say it, why don't you say it? Didn't you want to go to Hall Master Guan to complain about me? I'd like to see how you're going to complain about me. Wang Qianping's expression changed. He forced a smile and said, Official Chu, I was actually joking just now. Before Wang Qianping could finish his words, Chu Xiu had already taken a step forward. He arrived in front of Wang Qianping and directly grabbed at him. They had experienced Chu Xiu's temperamental personality before. He would attack as soon as he said he would, without the slightest bit of nonsense or hesitation. Previously, when he was facing the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, he was like this. It was simply impossible to predict. Now, Wang Qianping was mentally prepared. The moment he saw Chu Xiu, the gang energy around him erupted. He retreated and wanted to block Chu Xiu. However, Chu Xiu's grab changed into a seal halfway. The great Vajra wheel seal crashed down, and Wang Qianping's pitiful gang energy was almost instantly shattered by the great Vajra wheel seal. The great sacrificial grappling hand was executed. Wang Qianping was directly lifted up by the neck by Chu Xiu. The gang energy around him was completely sealed. This caused him to instantly reveal a panicked expression. He hurriedly shouted, Chu Xiu. What are you trying to do? If you dare to touch me, the Guanzhong torture room will definitely not tolerate you. It was a serious crime to kill a colleague. In the previous competition between the younger generation, Chu Xiu had crippled Li Tianhao. It could be said that the sword had no eyes, and the fists and kicks had no heart. However, if Chu Xiu touched him now, it would be a mutual killing between colleagues. This was definitely a big taboo in the Guanzhong torture room. At this moment, even Qing Zhouhai was shocked. He hurriedly advised, "Brother Chu, calm down. We're all on the same side. There's no need to make a fuss like this." At this moment, Chu Xiu only looked at Wang Qianping with a cold gaze. He said coldly, "If you want to stab me in the back, sure, but you have to be mentally prepared to bear my wrath. Now, are you prepared for this?" Feeling Chu Xiu's cold gaze, Wang Qianping's expression suddenly changed. His predecessor, Yin Butong's former disciple, Li Tianhao, had been crippled by Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu's ruthlessness had a previous record. If Chu Xiu went crazy and really crippled or killed him, who could he go to for justice? Looking at Chu Xiu's extremely cold gaze, Wang Qianping's tone was no longer tough. Instead, he lowered his voice and said, "Official Chu, I was blinded by lard just now. Please don't mind me. I have a cheap mouth. Please let me go this time, Official Chu." Seeing Wang Qianping's appearance, Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping both felt a little ashamed. This person was really a disgrace to the Guanzhong torture room. It was very normal to be afraid when facing a strong opponent. However, there were really not many who would lower their voice and beg for mercy like Wang Qianping. Chapter 288. As a martial artist, regardless of whether they were righteous or evil, they still needed to have a backbone. For example, Wang Qianping begged for mercy like a dog. It formed a very strong contrast with his sinister appearance of wanting to stab Chu Xiu in the back. Chu Xiu just sneered when he heard this. He slapped Wang Qianping's face with his hand and said lightly, "You know you have a cheap mouth. Next time, you better watch your mouth. You need to know that a loose tongue can cause trouble." Chu Xiu's insulting behavior made Wang Qianping's face turn red. If it were someone else, they might have already fought with Chu Xiu. However, Wang Qianping forcibly endured it. He even squeezed out a smile on his face and said reluctantly, "Official Chu is right. I will remember it." Chu Xiu snorted coldly and directly threw Wang Qianping to the side. He said lightly, "Get lost." Wang Qianping lowered his head as a wisp of dense hatred surged in his eyes. He left with his tail between his legs. However, before he left, he did not notice that a wisp of killing intent had also surged into Chu Xiu's eyes. Wang Qianping was just a nobody. If he had behaved himself, Chu Xiu would not have bothered with him. However, Wang Qianping insisted on stirring up some trouble. In that case, he could not blame Chu Xiu for being ruthless. In particular, Wang Qianping's performance just now was simply forcing Chu Xiu to kill him. Chu Xiu had humiliated him in such a manner just now. If it were any other cultivator, they would have long since exploded in anger and fought Chu Xiu to the death. In the end, Wang Qianping had forcefully endured it and bowed to the extreme. A guy who could be described as a smiling tiger by Cheng Zhouhai, a guy who defeated many competitors in Guanan and became Yin Butong's disciple, was now acting so cowardly and tolerating? Was it possible? Chu Xiu could guess how much the other party hated him. If he was allowed to return to the Guanzhong torture room alive, who knew what kind of trouble he would cause? In the past few years, there had been many Jianghu constables from the Guanzhong torture hall who had ventured out to investigate cases, and there had been many who had died accidentally. Right now, Chu Xiu did not want to kill him in public, but whether he could return to the Guanzhong torture hall alive would depend on his luck. When Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping saw Chu Xiu looking at them, a trace of fear appeared in their eyes. There weren't many people in the Guanzhong torture room who disregarded the rules like Chu Xiu. If they hadn't stopped him, who knew if Chu Xiu would have killed Wang Qianping? Chu Xiu smiled at the two and said, "Don't worry, the two of you. This case has been solved. As for Chu Xiaoda, he helped me investigate other things. He will be back in a few days." Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping were stunned. Solved? What did that mean? But before they had time to ponder, a dragon rider imperial guard knocked on the door and said in a deep voice, "Official Chu, General Feng asked me to bring you a message. Prince Anil, Jianghu, colluded with demons and killed an important minister of Eastern Qi, Qiu Zhenxing, the owner of the Pegasus farm. His Majesty has sent Zhang Rang, the majordomo of the front department, one of the 3 departments of the imperial palace. My breaking battalion will cooperate. Official Chu and other warriors from the Guanzhong torture room can also participate. After the case is over, everyone will be rewarded. The one who takes Jiang Wenyuan's head will be rewarded handsomely." With that, the Dragon Rider Imperial Guard took his leave. Chu Xiu nodded in understanding. The reaction of the Eastern Qi royal family was just as he had guessed. Jiang Wenyuan was doomed this time. Although the real cause of this matter was the conflict between the crown prince and the second prince, Lu Haochang couldn't punish his own son. So Jiang Wenyuan had to die. Since he had to die, he naturally had to give a reason. So the Eastern Qi imperial court casually gave Jiang Wenyuan a reason of colluding with demons. Otherwise, how could they explain why Jiang Wenyuan had to kill Qiu Zhenxing, who had no grudges with him and had nothing to do with him? Now in Jianghu, the demons had become professional scapegoats. Once there was something they couldn't explain, they would directly put the blame on the demons. In any case, in the eyes of most people, the demonic path had always been incomparably crazy and illogical. It was very normal for them to do such things. Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping looked at each other, their eyes full of confusion and confusion. Cheng Zhouhai was puzzled. "Brother Chu, what's going on? We haven't had time to investigate the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion. How could Jiang Wenyuan be convicted? Where's the evidence?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "If the Emperor of Eastern Qi wants to kill someone, does he need evidence? This time, we were invited by Eastern Qi. As long as Eastern Qi is satisfied and thinks that the case has been closed, do we still need evidence? Pack up and get ready to take action. Let Wang Qianping, that good-for-nothing, follow us. Destroying Prince Anil's mansion is a good job. After so many years, Prince Anil's bloodline has accumulated a lot of good things. How much you can get will depend on your ability." In a luxuriously decorated manner outside the Ji State Prefecture, Jiang Wenyuan rubbed his head. He always felt a sense of crisis lingering in his heart. It was as if he had neglected something, but he couldn't remember it no matter how hard he tried. Jiang Wenyuan pushed the door open and walked out. He happened to see Mr. Lu. Jiang Wenyuan seemed to remember something. He asked, "What on earth has your phaseless demon sect been doing recently? Why did so many people leave?" Mr. Lu chuckled. "It's nothing. Lord Demon Envoy has some instructions. It seems that we have to carry out other tasks. That's why some people were taken away." Hearing that, Jiang Wenyuan snorted coldly, "Don't forget that your phaseless demon sect is cooperating with me now. Every month, I give you guys a lot of cultivation resources, but in the end, you guys go against me on the surface. Do you really think I'm a fool?" Mr. Lu smiled. "Don't worry, Your Highness. There won't be a next time." Jiang Wenyuan snorted. "Good that you know." At this moment, a sudden battle cry came from outside the manor. This caused Jiang Wenyuan's expression to change. "Who's so bold to cause trouble in my Prince Anil's mansion? Do you want your family to be executed?" Jiang Wenyuan said angrily. At this moment, the door of the inner residence was blasted open. Over 100 martial artists rushed in. The one leading them was a tall middle-aged eunuch wearing a dark green brocade robe. At this moment, the eunuch was surrounded by a light green gang energy. Wherever he passed, a cold and gloomy aura wafted in. Some of the exotic flowers and plants in the Prince Anil's gang energy immediately began to wither when they came into contact with the gang energy on his body. It looked very evil. Jiang Wenyuan looked at the eunuch and said with a slightly trembling voice, "Chief Handprint Master of the Front Palace Division, Poisonous Dragon Hand, Zhang Rang. An expert of the Imperial Palace, the true confidant of the Eastern Qi Emperor Lu Haochang." Jiang Wenyuan naturally recognized Zhang Rang. At this moment, around Zhang Rang was Wang Jin, who he scolded a few days ago and ran away. She was looking at him with a cold smile. There was also Chu Xiu, who he had wanted to kill but failed to do so. He was looking at him expressionlessly with the people from the Guanzhong torture room. Among them were the Dragon Riders' Imperial Guards who belonged to the Second Prince's Vanguard Battalion. Seeing all these people gathered here, Jiang Wenyuan didn't even dare to think about what had happened. Zhang Rang chuckled and said, "Your Highness, I'm very honored that you still recognize me. Since that's the case, let me see you off today. It's also my honor to be able to end the last prince annal in the history of Eastern Qi." Jiang Wenyuan's eyes widened and he shouted, "Zhang Rang, what do you mean?" In the past, Emperor Taizu himself said that he would ensure the Jiang clan's eternal happiness. "What do you mean by this?" "I want to see His Majesty, I want to see His Majesty." Zhang Rang said calmly, "Prince Annal, stop struggling. His Majesty is busy every day and has no time to see you. I can't be bothered to talk about your crimes. You asked for it, so you can't blame anyone else." Emperor Taizu did say that he would ensure the Jiang clan's eternal happiness, but don't forget, the one sitting on the throne now is not Emperor Taizu. "Prince Annal, go on your way. I'll kill you and receive my reward. Next year, on your Memorial Day, I'll have someone burn Joss paper for you." Chu Xiu looked on coldly from the side. He had long felt that Jiang Wenyuan was courting death, but the speed at which he did so was faster than he imagined. Moreover, this time, Jiang Wenyuan could be said to have sent himself to his grave. If he hadn't gone to kill Chu Xiu wouldn't have been so obsessed with him. In the end, Jiang Wenyuan had sent Mr. Lu to kill Chu Xiu. Not only had he failed to kill Chu Xiu, but now he had a mole. This time, if Chu Xiu hadn't handed over the results to the second prince and allowed the second prince to add oil to the fire, the matter would have been exposed. Jiang Wenyuan might have been reprimanded and punished, but he wouldn't have been ordered to be killed by the emperor so quickly. At this time, Jiang Wenyuan's entire body was cold. This was a scene he had never imagined. His identity as a death exemption medallion would have a day like this. Only now did Jiang Wenyuan realize that everything he had was actually given to him by the Lu royal family, whom he regarded as his enemy. The so-called death exemption medallion was only because the emperor didn't want to kill him. If the emperor really wanted to kill him, even 10,000 death exemption medallions wouldn't be enough. Zhang Rang took a step forward, and dark green astral energy erupted from his body. As his claw descended, astral energy shot towards Jiang Wenyuan like a soaring dragon. In the blink of an eye, the area within 1,000 feet radius was enveloped by this highly toxic astral energy. All things fell silent, and all flowers withered. Martial artists who condensed the true martial core and communicated with the power of heaven and earth were known as martial Dao grandmasters. They had the strength to destroy a city and fight an army of 10,000 by themselves. Although Zhang Rang was a eunuch, he was also a genuine martial Dao grandmaster. At this time, his attack had the power to change the color of heaven and earth. "Prince Annal, I'm here to send you on your way." At this moment, a sword chime sounded in the Prince Annal residence. A long sword shining with a golden glow pierced through the air, slashing towards Zhang Rang's poisonous dragon claw. The pure yang sword aura pierced through the air and instantly melted the poisonous mist. An old man in a white Taoist robe walked out of the inner residence. The long sword flew back into his hand and disappeared into his loose Taoist robe. The old man said in a deep voice, "Where there's life, there's hope. Your Highness, take your people and leave first." This old man has received great kindness from the old prince in the past, and has been worshipped by your Jiang clan for decades. Now, it's time to return the favor. Chapter 289. Jiang Wenyuan had the ambition to rebel, so he naturally had to have some family background and strength. Otherwise, he would really be an arrogant idiot. Therefore, whether it was Chu Xiu or the others, they were not surprised by the sudden appearance of a martial Dao master who could match Zhang Rang. Zhang Rang frowned and pondered for a moment before saying, "Chunyang Dao sect's abandoned disciple, 9 Palace Scorching Sun, Do Han Wei? It was said that you killed a fellow disciple by mistake and were expelled from the Chunyang Dao sect. You were hunted down to the point where no one knew if you were dead or alive. I didn't expect you to still be alive and have even become a martial Dao master. Since you've become a martial Dao master, even the Chunyang Dao sect can't hunt you down like before. Why are you courting death? As one of the three major Daoist sects, the Chunyang Dao sect was the first to know about any changes in it. Although Do Hanwei's reputation in the pure Yang Dao sect wasn't that great in the past, he was still a well-known figure. Who would have thought that he would suddenly reveal the matter of killing a fellow sect member without permission? Since then, he had been hunted down by the pure Yang Dao sect and was also known by the people of the Jianghu. Back then, he was already in the unity of heaven and man state. Now that decades had passed, everyone thought he was long dead. Who would have thought that Do Hanwei had been hiding in Prince Annel's residence and had even stepped into the martial Dao master realm? Do Hanwei flung his Daoist robe and said in a deep voice, "Killed a fellow disciple by mistake? You're wrong about one thing. It wasn't a manslaughter. I was prepared to kill. Some people really deserve to be killed. Even if I had to betray the sect for it, I wouldn't hesitate. I don't want to talk about these old things anymore. If it wasn't for the previous Prince Annel who took the risk to take me in, I'm afraid I would have become a skeleton in a grave by now. I wouldn't have the cultivation base of a martial Dao master now. I must repay this kindness. Whether it's death or survival, we'll only know after a battle." As his voice fell, Do Hanwei flicked his long sleeves and from his loose robes, a series of long swords shining with pure yang astral energy shot out one after another. There were a total of 9 swords, each shining with dazzling pure yang astral energy as they slashed towards Zhang Rang. Behind Do Hanwei, Jiang Wenyuan glared angrily, his eyes filled with unwillingness. It was not easy for the Jiang clan to recruit such an expert and nurture him to become a Wu Dao grandmaster. But now he was exposed. Facing the notorious grand supervisor of the front hall department, poisonous dragon hand, Zhang Rang, even Jiang Wenyuan himself had no confidence in Do Hanwei. Uncle Qi, who was standing behind Jiang Wenyuan, hurriedly pulled Jiang Wenyuan and said, "Your Highness, let's go. We don't know how long Senior Do Hanwei can last. If we don't leave now, it will be too late." Jiang Wenyuan gritted his teeth and said, "Let's go." With that, Jiang Wenyuan left the prince's mansion under the escort of his henchmen. At this time, Do Hanwei had already begun to fight fiercely with Zhang Rang. Do Hanwei was born in Chunyang Dao sect, one of the 3 major Taoist sects in the world. His own strength was extremely profound. Chunyang Dao sect's pure yang astral energy was well known in the world. It was the existence of extreme yang among all astral energies. It had the magical power to destroy evil and was just able to restrain Zhang Rang's toxic astral energy. The martial arts technique that Do Hanwei cultivated was also very strange. He spent more than 10 years sacrificial refining 9 pure yang swords. When facing the enemy, he used pure yang astral energy to control them. He could even form the 9 palace scorching sun sword array with his own strength. Its power was very extraordinary. So even if Do Hanwei broke through to the real pellet state later than Zhang Rang, his combat experience was not as much as Zhang Rang. But right now, the two of them were evenly matched. While fighting with Do Hanwei, Zhang Rang shouted, "Everyone tack! Don't let Jiang Wenyuan escape." As soon as his voice fell, Zhang Rang's robe fluttered, and his astral energy fluttered. With a claw, a colorful poisonous mist burst out. Like a domain, it shrouded Do Hanwei in it. Within the range, even the heaven and earth's aura was corroded. Zhang Rang was also a little anxious. He didn't expect Do Hanwei's technique to restrain him so much that he couldn't take him down for a while. Amidst the colorful poisonous mist that was so colorful that it was impossible to see what was going on inside, a bright golden light appeared. Do Hanwei spat out a mouthful of blood, which was attached to his 9 pure yang swords. His blood was burning, and the 9 pure yang swords surrounded him, making him look like a blazing sun. "Defend!" With a shout, the 9 pure yang swords slashed out one after another, each more powerful than the other. The 9 swords slashed out together, directly tearing the poisonous mist domain apart. "Suppress!" In the blink of an eye, the 9 pure yang swords were linked together, condensing into a sword formation that attacked Zhang Rang, instantly suppressing him. The battle between the two martial Dao grandmasters fascinated the crowd below. After all, for people of their level, watching experts fight could bring them a lot of benefits. But benefits aside, the mission still had to be completed. After Jiang Wenyuan escaped, everyone immediately began to chase after him. They were determined to bring back Jiang Wenyuan's head. However, Prince Anil residents had accumulated a lot of power over the years. Among them, there were several experts at the unity of heaven and man realm. Even though Wang Jin and Fang Jinqi had the strength of the unity of heaven and man realm, and there were also many warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm among the front hall division that Zhang Rang brought with him, they were still stopped by the other party. These hanger-ons of the Prince of Anlu residence were all recruited by Jiang Wenyuan through his courteous actions over the years. They did not disappoint the offerings Jiang Wenyuan had given them. Even though they knew that the Prince of Anlu residence was about to fall apart, they still fought with all their might. Although there were some who escaped halfway, they were still the minority. At this time, Chu Xiu was also chasing after Jiang Wenyuan with the people from Guanzhong torture room, killing the enemies who came to stop them one by one. Cheng Zhouhai, Zhong Ping, and Wang Qianping followed behind Chu Xiu. They had the least people from Guanzhong torture room, so they were just there to watch the show. However, killing one person was a credit. When the time came, they could go to Eastern Qi to receive a reward. No matter what, it would be more than their salary from Guanzhong torture room. However, at this time, Wang Qianping looked at Chu Xiu with deep malice and resentment. He would never forget the humiliation that Chu Xiu brought to him yesterday. At this time, Wang Qianping was even thinking about whether he should take the opportunity to sneak an attack on Chu Xiu. However, this idea only went through his mind once before it was killed. Sneak an attack on Chu Xiu now was simply courting death. He had already experienced Chu Xiu's strength yesterday. Chu Xiu was an existence that could completely crush him. In the hands of Chu Xiu, he could not even block a single move. Moreover, even if the sneak attack was successful, Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping were here. If they saw him, unless he could kill them, he would not be able to return to Guanzhong torture room in this life. Otherwise, he would be chased to death by people from Guanzhong torture room. Chu Xiu's position in Guanzhong torture room was not the same as his. If he had been killed by Chu Xiu yesterday, then Guanzhong torture room would only punish Chu Xiu severely. However, if he dared to sneak an attack on Chu Xiu and cause his death, it would become an unforgivable felony. After all, he was just an ordinary inspector, while Chu Xiu was the most outstanding young man in Guanzhong torture room. Even if Guanzhong torture room claimed to be fair and impartial, there was still a great difference between the status of each martial artist. Just as Wang Qianping's imagination ran wild, he saw more than 10 diabolism martial artists with monstrous devil chi suddenly rushing out, which immediately shocked everyone present. Previously, they said that Jiang Wenyuan colluded with diabolism and so on. In fact, it was just an excuse made up by Zhang Rang. After all, the internal strife of the royal family was not a good thing to say. In the end, who would have thought that Jiang Wenyuan really colluded with diabolism? This was not an ordinary kind of courage. However, these diabolism martial artists did not come to stop Chu Xiu and the others. Instead, they wanted to rush out. Among them, the direction they chose was in the direction where Chu Xiu and the others were. A strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. He suddenly shouted, "Retreat!" As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu's figure immediately retreated to the surroundings. Cheng Zhouhai and the others were stunned for a moment, then immediately retreated to the sides. These diabolism martial artists were very strong. The weakest was at the physical invulnerability realm, and the leader was even at the unity of heaven and man realm. If they went head-on against them, they would simply be courting death. It was reasonable for Chu Xiu to ask them to retreat for the time being. And these diabolism martial artists seemed to really want to break out of the encirclement. After Chu Xiu retreated, they directly rushed past them. However, when the leader of the unity of heaven and man realm martial artists passed by Wang Qianping, whose speed was slower than Chu Xiu's, he suddenly slammed his palm down. A giant devil chi hand that was more than 10 feet in size suddenly smashed down, directly slapping the defenseless Wang Qianping away. In an instant, his internal organs were smashed, and he immediately lost all signs of life. Even at death's door, Wang Qianping could not understand why this diabolism martial artist did not attack when he passed by Chu Xiu, nor did he attack when he passed by Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping. However, when he passed by Wang Qianping, he suddenly slapped him to death, as if he was casually slapping a fly that was blocking the road. After killing Wang Qianping with one palm, the leading diabolism martial artist did not even stop, nor did he look at Chu Xiu and the others. Instead, he directly fled into the distance, as if his only purpose was to escape. Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping were dumbfounded. They subconsciously looked at Chu Xiu with a trace of suspicion. They could not be blamed for such actions. Yesterday, Wang Qianping was prepared to secretly stab Chu Xiu with a knife, but was taught a lesson by Chu Xiu. In the end, he died here inexplicably today. Anyone would subconsciously look at Chu Xiu with suspicion. Chu Xiu shrugged and said, "Why are you looking at me like that? Just now, I told you to retreat." In the end, I don't know what that idiot was thinking, but he was a little slow. He blocked someone's path and was killed with one palm. Who can you blame? Life and death are decreed by fate. This guy has no other choice but to blame his own bad luck. Chapter 290. Chu Xiu's words made Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping speechless. Unlucky? Perhaps this was the only explanation, even though it sounded perfunctory. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, everyone saw how Wang Qianping died. Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping weren't the kind of people who liked to meddle in other people's business. They also hated Wang Qianping, so no one said anything. Instead, they continued to kill the people from Prince Annal's residence. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Don't gather together. Everyone split up. Pick the weaker ones. We're outsiders and we're only here to get our rewards. The escape of Prince Annal's residence has nothing to do with us." Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping nodded. Even if Chu Xiu didn't say so, they would still do so. If a few experts suddenly appeared and killed them with a slap, then that would be really unlucky. After the three of them split up, Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. As if he already had a target in mind, he chased in one direction. The people who attacked just now were from Phaseless Demon Sect. However, that Unity of Heaven and Man Realm martial artist wasn't Mr. Lu, but another Unity of Heaven and Man Realm expert from Phaseless Demon Sect. That Wang Qianping was courting death, so Chu Xiu naturally wouldn't spare him. Although Wang Qianping's strength was low and Chu Xiu didn't really care about him, he didn't want to bring trouble back to the Guanzhong torture room. So, he decided to settle it here. He was just a physical invulnerability realm martial artist. The people from Phaseless Demon Sect didn't mind doing Chu Xiu a favor and killed him with a slap. At this moment, Jianghu had already escaped with Uncle Qi and another Unity of Heaven and Man Realm martial artist. The rest of the hanger-ons and priests were behind them, blocking the pursuers. For the time being, they shouldn't be able to catch up. Looking at Uncle Qi and the middle-aged man with a long sword on his back, Jianghu couldn't help but feel sad. He couldn't help but sigh. The middle-aged man with the long sword on his back said in a deep voice, "Your Highness doesn't need to be like this. Didn't you already prepare quite a bit of assets on the northern Yen and West Chu side? If we can't stay in eastern Qi, we can go to northern Yen or West Chu." Uncle Qi also said, "That's right. The Lu imperial family is treacherous. After this, they will definitely be reviled by the world. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows." Actually, King and Li's bloodline had already sent people to buy property in the northern Yen and western Chu lands since Jianghu ancestors, as well as large amounts of resources. They were afraid that the Lu family would suddenly turn against them, so they had a way out. However, King and Li's bloodline had been safe and sound all these years, and Jianghu had never thought that he would have to use it one day. Jianghu revealed a crying and smiling expression. "Gone, everything is gone. My roots are in Eastern Qi. Even if I go to Northern Yen or West Chu, I won't have a chance to make a comeback." Only now did Jianghu realize that everything he had was given to him by the Lu imperial family. Eastern Qi recognized him as the King of Ease. He was the true king of Eastern Qi with a different surname. He could peacefully develop his power and recruit so many heroes of the Jianghu. Without this identity, he was not even worth a fart. How could he make a comeback? At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded, "Since your highness doesn't want to go to West Chu or Northern Yen, why don't you stay in Eastern Qi?" Uncle Qi and the middle-aged warrior with a long sword on his back immediately became vigilant as they looked in the direction of the voice. They saw Mr. Lu's figure walk out from the darkness. Seeing that it was him, Uncle Qi and the martial artist let out a sigh of relief. They were naturally very familiar with Mr. Lu. The Phaseless Demon Sect had been working with King in Li's palace for a long time, and Mr. Lu had always been the one to contact them. However, Jiang Wenyuan looked at Mr. Lu and shouted, "Why did your Phaseless Demon Sect people run away just now? You people from the demonic path are really unreliable." Jiang Wenyuan saw that the Phaseless Demon Sect people didn't participate in the fight against the pursuers. Instead, they all ran away. Uncle Qi pulled Jiang Wenyuan lightly, indicating for him to calm down. Now that King in Li's palace had completely fallen apart, their cooperation with the Phaseless Demon Sect naturally couldn't continue. It was best not to offend them at this time. They might even need to borrow the power of the Phaseless Demon Sect to escape. Just as Uncle Qi was about to say something, Mr. Lu suddenly said, "Chu, come out. My Phaseless Demon Sect won't be able to take this credit, so I'll give it to you." Chu Xiu's figure also walked out from another direction. He cupped his hands towards Mr. Lu and said with a smile, "Thank you, Senior." Seeing Chu Xiu appear, Jiang Wenyuan and the others instantly widened their eyes. They didn't know what was going on. Chu Xiu asked, "Senior, did you move all the things from King in Li's palace?" Mr. Lu smiled and said, "You informed me in time. After the people from the front hall called, I already let the last batch of Phaseless Demon Sect disciples use the secret space box to move all the things. TSKSK, all these years, King in Li's palace has really accumulated a lot of wealth. It must have been hard for the Lu family to tolerate you for so long." Chu Xiu, who was pretending to be a demonic sect disciple, had a great deal of business with the Phaseless Demon Sect. When the people from the front hall were about to make their move, he sent a message to Mr. Lu, telling them to prepare and take advantage of the situation. In the end, King in Li's palace would definitely be raided and he wouldn't be able to get anything. Mr. Lu also returned the favor by secretly following Jiang Wenyuan and telling him Jiang Wenyuan's location to Chu Xiu. Although the Eastern Qi Emperor had already said that Jiang Wenyuan's head could be exchanged for a reward, he was still a demonic cultivator, and he was from the notorious Phaseless Demon Sect. If Mr. Lu took Jiang Wenyuan's head to ask for a reward, he would probably lose his own head to the Eastern Qi Emperor. Therefore, it was better to give it to Chu Xiu. After listening to the conversation between the two, Jiang Wenyuan's face was already red from the stimulation, as if blood was about to drip out. He pointed at Mr. Lu and shouted, "Bastard! You actually betrayed me." Uncle Qi and the martial artist with the sword on his back were also shocked. It was one thing for King in Li's palace to collude with the Phaseless Demon Sect. After all, with Jiang Wenyuan's status, it was normal for him to do such a thing. However, Chu Xiu was the most outstanding martial artist of the younger generation in the Guanzhong torture room, and he actually did something like colluding with the demonic cultivators. If news of this got out, Chu Xiu would definitely be doomed. Mr. Lu said calmly, "Your Highness, you're wrong. My Phaseless Demon Sect has never been your subordinate, so how could I betray you? Seeing that we've worked together before, I've personally come to see you off. This is already very kind of me." Jiang Wenyuan glared at Chu Xiu and Mr. Lu, looking like he wanted to swallow them alive. At this moment, he suddenly realized why he had failed when he asked Mr. Lu to kill Chu Xiu. The two of them had actually colluded long ago. Chu Xiu took a step forward and said calmly, "Prince and Lu, originally, you and I had minded our own business. Even if the progress of the case was stuck in your dragon-gathering pavilion, it would still depend on the attitude of the Eastern Qi Imperial Court. I wouldn't have forcefully attacked you. But you insisted on killing me. You've courted your own death, so you can't blame anyone else. Now that the Eastern Qi Emperor wants your head, Even if you escape to the northern Yen West Chu, you'll still face endless pursuit. So why don't you take advantage of me now? I'll also give you a quick death. Isn't that good? The middle-aged martial artist with a sword on his back took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "Uncle Chi, take His Highness away first. I'll stop them here." Mr. Lu laughed strangely and said, "Sorrowful autumn swordsman Han Dongel, you've been a guest under Jiang Wenyuan for almost 10 years, right? Back then, you made a grudge against the Nansong Xiahou clan because of a woman, and it was Jiang Wenyuan who helped you settle it. But in fact, Jiang Wenyuan only said one sentence. For this sentence, you've been a guest under Jiang Wenyuan for 10 years, and you've been loyal to him. Isn't that enough? Why are you risking your life? Don't you know my strength?" Han Dongel pulled out the long sword he'd always carried on his back. It was a magnificent long sword with strange patterns, and it looked unusually dazzling. The kindness of a meal must be repaid, and the grievances of a small grudge must be repaid. Since I've received His Highness' kindness in the past, now I have to repay it. The kindness of a meal is already like this, let alone His Highness helping me block the Nansong Xiahou clan. Although it's just one sentence, it's more valuable than my life. Mr. Lu, I've seen you fight. Your strength is probably only a step away from the martial arts Grand Master realm. I'm far from being your match. But today, as long as I can still pick up my sword, you can't touch His Highness." Seeing Han Dongel like this, Mr. Lu shook his head and said, "Loyalty is always reserved for dogs. A martial artist from a humble background like you is more loyal than those disciples from large sections. Now I know why Jiang Wenyuan likes to recruit martial artists from humble backgrounds like you, even at any cost. You people are really stupid to the point of being cute. I'm a bit reluctant to kill you. I rarely give people a chance. Now, I'm giving you a chance. Are you going to return it or not?" Han Dongel shook his head and said, "Everyone has their own persistence in their hearts. Just like the Kunlun devil cult has been destroyed for so many years, but your faceless demon sect still doesn't give up. Now, I won't back down either." As his voice fell, Han Dongel actually directly slashed at Mr. Lu with his sword. The sword momentum was as swift as the wind, incomparably magnificent and dazzling. "What a pity, you're so stubborn." Mr. Lu sighed and slammed his palm down. Boundless demonic chi condensed into a terrifying giant hand that attacked Han Dongel's sword momentum. Yama Demon Claw, tearing the heavens and splitting the earth. Almost in an instant, Han Dongel's sword momentum was shattered by Mr. Lu's claw. The scene was completely crushed. However, Han Dongel didn't seem to be afraid of death at all. Seeing that he was no match for Mr. Lu, he actually chose to burn his essence blood to delay Mr. Lu. Jiang Wenyuan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Humans weren't plants. Previously, he recruited these hanger-ons and worshippers with utilitarian intentions. In fact, he just wanted to make use of them. However, these people had already accompanied him for more than 10 years or even decades. In the end, they were all risking their lives to protect him. How could Jiang Wenyuan not feel touched? However, now wasn't the time to feel touched. Uncle Chi directly pulled Jiang Wenyuan up and shouted, "Prince, leave quickly." As he spoke, Uncle Chi directly exploded with his fastest speed. He didn't care about any seniority and forcibly carried Jiang Wenyuan on his back, wanting to escape. However, not long after he ran, Chu Xiu's voice rang out behind him. "You can't run away. Why don't you lend me your head to claim the reward? Next year, I can still burn some paper money for you so that you can continue to live comfortably in the underworld. Isn't that good?" Chapter 291. Chu Xiu colluded with various parties and finally succeeded in getting rid of Jiang Wenyuan with the help of the Eastern Qi royal family. How could he let the other party off so easily? However, Chu Xiu did not expect the Jiang clan to have accumulated such a strong foundation over the years. This foundation was not in terms of cultivation resources, but in terms of people. The Jianghu was evil, and profit was the top priority. Even some of the famous righteous sects spoke of benevolence and righteousness, but in reality, they tossed morality aside. However, the world was so big, and there were some people who truly valued loyalty, filial piety, benevolence, and righteousness. For example, Do Hanwei and now Han Dongel were both like this. However, it was a pity that such people were too few. Moreover, with Jiang Wenyuan's current situation, it was useless no matter how many of such people there were. From today onwards, the King of Peace and Happiness's bloodline was destined to go to the underworld. Uncle Chi looked at Chu Xiu behind him in shock. Previously in the Dragon Gatherer Pavilion, he had fought with Chu Xiu. At that time, he knew that Chu Xiu was very strong, but he did not expect Chu Xiu to have such terrifying speed. The fast and slow 9 words formula's inner binding seal was the pinnacle of speed. At least in a short distance, other than consuming too much internal energy and not being able to use it for a long time, there was almost no weakness. In a few breaths' time, Chu Xiu had already caught up with Uncle Chi. He directly slashed at Uncle Chi, and the blood-refined god's aura was mixed with surging demonic energy. Uncle Chi still carried Jiang Wenyuan on his back. He could not retreat, nor did he dare to retreat. He could only explode all the earth energy in his body to block this slash. With a loud bang, Uncle Chi's body did not move, but a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Putting down Jiang Wenyuan, Uncle Chi turned to Jiang Wenyuan and said in a low voice, "If not for your highness saving my life in the past, I'm afraid this old man would have long become a skeleton in a grave. Now this old man can only block this one last time for your highness. If you escape to West Chu or Northern Yen, you will have a chance to live. Your highness, take care." As soon as he finished speaking, Uncle Chi formed a seal with one hand. In an instant, his aura skyrocketed from the physical invulnerability realm all the way to the 3 flowers at one's prominence, 5 chis collecting in mind, and finally to the oneness of heaven and man. This was Uncle Chi's strength when he was at his peak. If he had not encountered a problem when he was trying to break through to Martial Dao Grandmaster, his current strength would not be inferior to Do Hanwei. However, at that moment, Uncle Chi's complexion was frighteningly pale. There were even streams of essential energy surging through his meridians. It was extremely evil. In the past, Uncle Chi encountered a problem when he was trying to break through to the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm. His physical body was actually already rotten beyond recognition. Even with the help of the Jianghu's miracle doctor, Feng Buping, he had improved a little, but he could only maintain the cultivation of the physical invulnerability realm. Now, he had forcefully broken through the seal and unleashed the strength of the oneness of heaven and man realm. In reality, he was committing suicide. Even if Chu Xiu retreated now, it would not take long before Uncle Chi's meridians would explode from overexertion. After bursting forth with his final moment of brilliance, Uncle Chi took a step forward and attacked Chu Xiu. The ground beneath his feet was actually left with a crater that was dozens of feet wide. Uncle Chi could not hold on for much longer, so he wanted to use the last of his strength to fight Chu Xiu to death. Even if he had to injure him so severely that he could not attack Jiang Wenyuan again, it was still good enough. Jiang Wenyuan, who was behind, gritted his teeth as he watched all this. However, in the end he still chose to turn around and escape. Among the guest officials under his command, Uncle Chi was his true confidant. He was saved by Jiang Wenyuan when he was young, and he was both a master and a friend to Jiang Wenyuan. He could be said to be loyal. However, it was precisely because of this that Jiang Wenyuan chose to escape immediately. He did not want to let Uncle Chi down. At this moment, Chu Xiu, who was facing Uncle Chi, had a serious look in his eyes. Uncle Chi, who had unleashed his last trump card, was so powerful that he was practically no different from the oneness of heaven and man realm experts like Mr. Liu or the Heavenly Sin branch leader. At most, his physical strength was slightly weaker. However, Uncle Chi's punch seemed to contain a hint of the power of heaven and earth. His Gang Chi merged with the heaven and earth, passively carrying a trace of power that belonged to heaven and earth. When the punch landed, it brought with it the roar of a dragon and a tiger, roaring through the heavens and earth. Chu Xiu held his sword with both hands. In an instant his blade was completely soaked in demonic aura. The Avicii Devil's Blade, the gates of hell opened. Facing Uncle Chi of this level, Chu Xiu used the second blade of his Avicii 3 blades to take the attack head-on. The powerful Gang Chi fist collided with Chu Xiu's demonic aura blade, and an earth-shattering sound erupted. A clanging sound rang out, and the blood-colored demonic aura blade shattered. Chu Xiu's figure retreated step by step. When his feet landed on the ground, a hole several feet wide was immediately blasted open. After retreating over 10 steps, Chu Xiu finally managed to stop. However, his hands were already numb, and even the heavenly demon dance in his hands was trembling. This was a complete suppression of strength. No matter how strong Chu Xiu's martial arts techniques were, he would not be able to withstand it. Of course, the current Chu Xiu had improved very obviously. Previously, Chu Xiu had used Duguin to take a blow from the Heavenly Sin branch leader head-on. However, that blow had already exhausted all of Chu Xiu's strength. Now, he still had the strength to fight. Uncle Chi did not stop at all. His hands formed a fist seal again, and he smashed it towards Chu Xiu like he was moving mountains and seas. When his fist landed just now, although Chu Xiu had been sent flying more than 10 steps, his entire right arm was dripping with blood. It was obvious that it was not far from being completely crippled. There was not much time left for Uncle Chi. When this fist seal landed, its power was several times stronger than Chu Xiu's great Vajra wheel seal. Everywhere it passed, endless sonic booms rang out. Even the space around Chu Xiu had been sealed, so he had nowhere to hide or evade. The pressure of this seal continued to attack. Chu Xiu also landed a fist seal. The surrounding Gang Chi seemed to start to stagnate as it enveloped Uncle Chi. Wisdom fist seal, main space. Heaven and earth were useless. Although this seal technique consumed a shocking amount of energy, it could be used both offensively and defensively. Its power was extraordinary. However, under Uncle Chi's desperate attack, the opponent's crushing power was too shocking. The space sealed by the Wisdom Fist seal only managed to stop Uncle Chi for a few breaths of time before it was completely destroyed. At the crucial moment, Chu Xiu's hand formed the Duguin seal. All the Gang Chi in his body condensed into one. He was as immovable as a mountain and impregnable. 2 consecutive seals blasted out, but they still could not block Uncle Chi's incomparably powerful fist seal. The Gang Chi defense that Duguin had set up was directly shattered. Both of Chu Xiu's feet were smashed into the ground. His body flew backwards, leaving 2 deep marks on the ground. A stream of blood flowed out of Chu Xiu's mouth. His internal organs felt waves of pain. However, the corners of his mouth curled up to reveal a smile. This was because Uncle Chi's arms, which were dripping with blood, were hanging by his side. His body, which had already completely aged and decayed, could not support such a powerful force. Now, he was completely crippled. Uncle Chi sighed helplessly. He had already tried his best. However, Chu Xiu's strength was beyond his imagination. The 2 attacks that he had unleashed with all his cultivation had actually been blocked by Chu Xiu. The only price he had paid was a slight shock to his internal organs. In this way, even if he wanted to kill Chu Xiu at his peak, he might not be able to do it. However, he did not ask for too much. If he could block Chu Xiu for a moment, Jianghu would have an additional chance of survival. His arms were crippled, but he still had his legs. At this moment, all the strength in Uncle Chi's body was channeled into his legs. His feet moved like a qilin shaking the ground. A large area of the ground beneath his feet started to crack. Uncle Chi's body shot out like a cannonball. He descended from the sky and kicked at Chu Xiu. Wherever he passed, sonic booms could be heard. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. This old guy's all-out attack was really extraordinary. However, it was a pity that Uncle Chi was already an arrow at the end of its flight. The power of this kick was not enough. Since ancient times, there had been no conclusion on whether a martial artist should train his body or train his chi. However, everyone in the world knew that only a powerful body could contain more true chi, and only a powerful body could withstand all kinds of powerful forces. Therefore, the basics of martial arts must be trained in the body, followed by chi. Right now, Uncle Chi's strength was extremely incompatible with the strength of his body. The strength of the unity of heaven and man realm coupled with his old body that was only at the physical invulnerability realm couldn't allow his strength to reach its peak. Facing Uncle Chi's kick, Chu Xiu did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. He formed a fist seal and faced the sky. At this moment, the fist seal in Chu Xiu's hand released an endless dazzling light. It was as dazzling as the blazing sun, incomparably resplendent. Fulfill the wishes of all, release the supreme light. Forwarding formula, perfect Aquarius seal. This was the strongest seal that Chu Xiu had mastered so far in the fast and slow 9 words formulas. Forcefully using it would even cause a slight backlash of true qi. Previously at the God Weapon Conference, Chu Xiu had used this technique to kill Tong Kaitai. And now, facing Uncle Qi, under Chu Xiu's perfect Aquarius seal, endless gang qi and the brilliance of the sun were released. The violent explosion of true qi tore the ground in a radius of over 10 feet. Even Jiang Wenyuan, who had escaped several miles away, could see the dazzling light in the night sky. In the midst of the endless explosion of gang qi, Chu Xiu's figure did not move. When the smoke and dust dispersed, Chu Xiu's face was slightly pale. However, Uncle Qi's figure was already nowhere to be seen. There was only scattered blood mist floating in the air. Under the attack just now, the powerful force produced had directly torn Uncle Qi's body apart, turning him into a cloud of blood mist. This was the consequence of having a weak body. Under the collision of such a level of power, not even a complete corpse could be preserved. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Really, why did you have to do this?" With Uncle Qi's strength, as long as he didn't use power that exceeded the physical invulnerability realm, it would not be a problem for him to live for another few decades. He might even survive Jiang Wenyuan's death. In the end, regardless of whether it was Do Hanwei, Han Dongel, or now Uncle Qi, they all sacrificed themselves for one person. This kind of feeling was something that Chu Xiu could understand. However, one's life was given by one's own mother and father. Other than oneself, no one else could take it away. Although Uncle Qi and the others were worthy of respect, Chu Xiu would never acknowledge such a thing in this lifetime. Chapter 292. In the wilderness, Jiang Wenyuan ran with all his strength. He felt that his spiritual qi was being consumed. He didn't know how long it had been since he last felt this way. After living like a prince for decades, Jiang Wenyuan had the strength of the innate realm. However, it was just a realm. It could strengthen his body and allow him to live longer, but it didn't mean that he had combat power. Jiang Wenyuan had already seen the dazzling light behind him. He couldn't help but feel a trace of sadness in his heart. He knew that Uncle Qi probably couldn't stop Chu Xiu. However, compared to the sadness, Jiang Wenyuan's heart was also filled with unwillingness. The Annal residents had accumulated power for so many years, but in the end, they found that everything was no match for a sentence from the Lu family. How sad was this? However, before Jiang Wenyuan could grieve for too long, there was already the sound of wind breaking behind him. Chu Xiu was dressed in black with a demonic saber at his waist. Blood-colored gang qi danced around his body, making him look like a god of death. He looked extremely terrifying. If it were any other three-flower realm warrior, Uncle Qi might have been able to block him for long enough for them to escape. However, Jiang Wenyuan's speed was far from enough. Looking at Chu Xiu chasing behind him, Jiang Wenyuan's eyes showed endless fear. When he first met Chu Xiu, he thought of him as a fledgling and wanted to recruit him. Even not long ago, in Jiang Wenyuan's eyes, Chu Xiu was like an ant. He could kill him if he wanted as long as he did it cleanly. He even dared to kill the owner of the Pegasus Ranch, Qiu Zhensheng. What was a mere Chu Xiu to him? However, it was only now that Jiang Wenyuan realized that without the title of Annal Prince and the power he relied on to survive, he was nothing at all. In terms of pure combat power, he was the ant in front of Chu Xiu. Seeing that Chu Xiu was getting closer, the fear in Jiang Wenyuan's eyes turned into unwillingness. He shouted, "Chu Xiu, I know you want benefits. Although you can go to the Eastern Qi Emperor to receive a reward if you kill me, you can get even more if you don't kill me. Northern Yan. Western Chu. I have countless assets and accumulations here, and I also... However, before Jiang Wenyuan could finish speaking, Chu Xiu's hand moved, and a scarlet-red blade light attacked. In an instant, Jiang Wenyuan's head was separated from his body. There was still a look of dissatisfaction in his eyes, but his head was already in Chu Xiu's hand. Perhaps until his death, Jiang Wenyuan could not believe that Chu Xiu would kill him without even listening to his conditions. Holding Jiang Wenyuan's head, the heavenly demon dance was not stained with any blood at all. The blood flowed along the edge of the saber to the ground, and the saber remained sharp and dazzling. Chu Xiu was not interested in Jiang Wenyuan's conditions, and he did not plan on going to northern Yen and West Chu to think about these things. It was more convenient to take Jiang Wenyuan's head to receive his reward. What's more, Chu Xiu did not intend to forgive those who wanted to kill him. No one could change his mind. Sometimes, having a heart of stone was also a kind of decisiveness. After searching Jiang Wenyuan's body, there was nothing of value. There were only a few special machine keys, which should be used to store some of the treasures and resources in Prince Annal's mansion. It was of no use to Chu Xiu. The entire Prince Annal's mansion had been ransacked by the phaseless demon sect. The rest of the things would definitely be taken away by the front hall department. It would not be Chu Xiu's turn. This time, Jiang Wenyuan escaped in a hurry, so he definitely did not bring the rest of the things with him. Therefore, Chu Xiu did not care about the body and directly left with the head. When Chu Xiu returned with Jiang Wenyuan's head, Han Dongel and Mr. Lu had already disappeared. However, Chu Xiu had already guessed the result. Facing an expert like Mr. Lu, who was only one step away from the martial arts grandmaster realm, Han Dongel was no match at all. He should have been killed by now, and even his body had been cleaned up by Mr. Lu. When Chu Xiu returned to Prince Annal's mansion, the battle there had just ended. The front hall department's chief steward Zhang Rang was not in a good state. His neat dark green robe had been torn, and his face was incomparably pale. His originally gloomy aura was now filled with traces of pure yang energy. However, this was not a good thing. His injury was caused by the pure yang astral qi entering his body. For a martial artist like him who originally cultivated in evil techniques, it was a hard injury. It would take a while to heal. However, in front of him, Do Hanwei was already dead. 9 pure yang swords were scattered on the ground. More than half of them had been shattered. Do Hanwei did not fall, but his face was dark green. His body was emitting corpse energy, and there was a big hole in his chest from Zhang Rang's attack. His heart was nowhere to be seen. After the battle, this former disciple of the pure Yang Taoist sect was defeated by Zhang Rang. He was defeated, which meant he was dead. He had repaid the Jiang clan's debt of gratitude, even though he had to pay it with his life. As for the other members of Prince Annal's mansion, they were either killed or escaped. The entire Prince Annal's mansion had completely fallen apart. When they saw Chu Xiu return with Jiang Wenyuan's head, everyone present revealed a strange look. They did not expect that the one who killed Jiang Wenyuan would be an outsider like Chu Xiu. This made them feel a little regretful and unconvinced. However, after seeing this scene, Zhang Rang's expression improved a little. His Majesty had asked him to complete this mission. If he had messed it up, then his impression in His Majesty's heart would be lowered. Now that Chu Xiu had returned with Jiang Wenyuan's head, and the rest of the members of Prince Annal's mansion had been mostly killed, Zhang Rang could take these things to report to Lu Haocheng. Zhang Rang coughed and said, "Chu Xiu, you've done well this time. I will put in a good word for you in front of His Majesty. The Eastern Qi Imperial Court will not take a single cent of the rewards promised for the Guanzhong torture room mission. Similarly, the few of you have also participated in the killing of Prince Annal's mansion. I, Eastern Qi, will also reward you according to your contributions. Especially Chu Xiu. His Majesty will reward you handsomely for killing Jiang Wenyuan." After Chu Xiu and the others cupped their hands in thanks, Zhang Rang took Jiang Wenyuan's head and left with his men. Chu Xiu was not afraid that Zhang Rang would tamper with the credit because he did not dare. At his position, there were too many people who had their eyes on him. Therefore, Zhang Rang could be said to be very careful and did not dare to cross the line. Now that they were in public, everyone knew who the credit should be. Zhang Rang could not be greedy for this kind of credit. When they returned to the inn to rest, Cheng Zhouhai and Zhong Ping were still in a daze. This mission could be said to be the most inexplicable one they had ever carried out. He had completed it inexplicably, and he had even participated in the mission to kill Prince Annal's residents. However, Zhong Ping felt that he had killed quite a lot of people. Si Ming had taught him all kinds of killing techniques since he was young. When it came to investigating cases, he could not compare to Cheng Zhouhai or even Chu Xiu. However, he was very good at killing people. Therefore, when he took action this time, the number of people who died in Zhong Ping's hands was almost double that of Cheng Zhouhai. 2 days later, the rewards were handed out. It was unknown whether it was because Lu Haochang was generous or because the Eastern Qi imperial court was rich and overbearing, but the rewards given to Chu Xiu and the others were very generous. The rewards promised to the Guanzhong torture room were all given by the Eastern Qi imperial court. Zhong Ping and Cheng Zhouhai also received a lot of extra rewards according to the number of people they killed. Of course, Zhong Ping received more. As for Chu Xiu, because he killed Jiang Wenyuan, he received the most preferential treatment. In addition to giving Chu Xiu a lot of cultivation resources, the Eastern Qi Imperial Court also gave him an 8-revolution elixir, the 5 elements regeneration elixir. Generally, elixir pills from 1st revolution to 3rd revolution were relatively common and could be refined by low-level alchemists. But the elixir pills from 4th revolution to 6th revolution not only required the proficiency of the alchemist, but also the accumulation of a lot of precious materials. Even the elixir recipe had to be very strict. A little mistake would lead to the failure of the whole furnace of elixir pills, resulting in heavy losses. Therefore, most of the elixir pills from 4th revolution to 6th revolution in Jianghu were only qualified and capable of refining by some big sections. As for the 7 to 9 revolution pills, they were called divine pills by some people. They had powerful effects and were extremely difficult to concoct. The control of the fire was extremely strict. If the person concocting the pill was a little bit off, he would not be able to succeed. Even most of the elixir pills from 7th revolution and above were accidentally produced when the elixir masters were refining other elixir pills. The amount of medicine in the elixir recipe had changed in some way. But sometimes, this kind of thing could only be found by chance. A lot of materials were consumed. Sometimes, it was possible to refine elixir pills, but most of the time, it was a pile of waste. Chu Xiu looked at the 5 elements biotransformation pill with a strange look in his eyes. The royal family of Eastern Qi was really considerate. They knew that he was about to step into the 5 Qis collecting in Yuan realm, so they rushed to give him a 5 elements biotransformation pill. This 5 elements biotransformation pill was refined with 5 extremely precious 5 elements materials. It could balance the power of the 5 elements in one's body. The medicinal efficacy would circulate in one's body in an endless cycle, bringing extremely strong medicinal efficacy to the user. For a martial artist like Chu Xiu who was about to break through to the 5 Qis collecting in Yuan realm, the 5 Qis collecting in Yuan realm was definitely a great help. However, Chu Xiu did not refine it right away. If he wanted to refine a god-tier pill of this level, he would need at least a few days. And now, Chu Xiu had not really polished the 5 Qis collecting in Yuan realm to its peak. When Chu Xiu felt that he was almost ready, he could take this 5 elements biotransformation pill and break through the bottleneck in one fell swoop with the help of the medicinal efficacy. This would save Chu Xiu a lot of time. At this time, Chu Xiaoda also returned and brought news from Shangyang. Cheng Zhouhai and the others did not know when Chu Xiu had hooked up with Chu Xiaoda, but they also knew the ways of the world. Chu Xiaoda had something to say to Chu Xiu, so they temporarily retreated. Chapter 293. The trip to Shangyang County had left a deep impression on Chu Xiaoda. It also made him firmly believe that standing on Chu Xiu's side was the right thing to do. When he brought the 9 branch halls token to Mo Tianlin immediately started investigating Qiu Dongmao for him without a word. In Shangyang County, he had seen the power of the Shangyang Mo family. It was definitely more useful than the Eastern Qi Imperial Court. All the martial arts forces, big and small, and even the lone cultivators, had to give face to the Shangyang Mo family. It was as if their word was law. At the thought that this power could help him in the future, Chu Xiaoda felt a little excited. Although the 9-branch hall's power was not for nothing, and you had to pay as much as you gained, it was still better than Chu Xiaoda being alone and helpless. Chu Xiao asked in a low voice, "Is there a result from Qiu Dongmao?" Chu Xiaoda nodded and said, "There is a result. There is indeed something wrong with that Qiu Dongmao. A month ago, and even for this whole year, Qiu Dongmao did not go out. He stayed in Shangyang County obediently. But after Qiu Zhenxing rejected the crown prince sent one of his men to see Qiu Dongmao. Since then, Qiu Dongmao has bought many tonics and sent them to Qiu Zhenxing. Qiu Dongmao has done this before, but it was just a way for him to curry favor with Qiu Zhenxing. But this month, he has done it very frequently." A strange look appeared in Chu Xiao's eyes. He had already guessed what was going on. Although the crown prince was rather mediocre, he was not an idiot. It was fine that Qiu Zhenxing stood on the side of the second prince. He could rope in Qiu Zhenxing's son. Of course, the person he wanted to rope in was not Qiu Zhenxing's eldest son, Qiu Dongning, but his illegitimate son, Qiu Dongmao. The poison was indeed from Qiu Dongmao. Chu Xiao could guarantee that the tonics he sent to Qiu Zhenxing contained the poison of the begonia of July. If it were other martial artists, they wouldn't be interested in some ordinary supplements, but Qiu Zhenxing was a simple person. He was the dignified owner of the Pegasus farm and a great expert at the unity of heaven and man realm. Most of the time, he only ate plain tea and rice. Therefore, he would never waste the things that Qiu Dongmao sent and would even share them with his family. Without Jiang Wenyuan's interference, Qiu Dongning would have been killed by the July begonia's poison. He would not have been poisoned but killed by the rebound of his Zhen Qi, which was very similar to Qi deviation. At that time, Qiu Zhenxing's only way was to bring Qiu Dongmao over and train him as an illegitimate son. Qiu Dongmao had his weakness in the hands of the crown prince. The crown prince could also use Qiu Dongmao to do a lot of things. Unfortunately, a good plan was secretly destroyed by Jiang Wenyuan in the end. Once Qiu Zhenxing died, Qiu Dongmao was no longer of much use. If Qiu Dongmao's strength was a little stronger, the Eastern Qi Imperial Court might let him manage the Pegasus farm. But now Qiu Dongmao had not even reached the innate realm. It was a joke to let Qiu Dongmao manage such a large Pegasus farm. At most, the Eastern Qi Imperial Court would give Qiu Dongmao some glory and wealth so that he could live a stable life. That was all. Of course, Qiu Dongmao was useless to the crown prince, but it was very useful to Chu Xiao. Chu Xiao had checked Qiu Zhenxing's farm one by one. Not only did he not find any cultivation method, but even some precious cultivation resources and other things were not found by Chu Xiao. Mr. Lu did not take these things, nor did Qiu Zhenxing, so the only possibility was that he had hidden them. Although Qiu Dongmao was Qiu Zhenxing's illegitimate son, an illegitimate son was still a son, and his strength was no threat to Qiu Zhenxing. In case of emergency or to leave a way out, Qiu Dongmao was very likely to know these things. Thinking of Qiu Dongmao's big reaction when Cheng Zhouhai was investigating the case, this possibility increased a little. After thinking about it, Chu Xiao asked, "Did you find any evidence this time?" Chu Xiaoda shook his head and said, "There was no evidence. The man sent by the crown prince only appeared once and never appeared again. And Qiu Dongmao did a very clean job there, leaving no evidence. Even the July begonia should have been given to him by the crown prince." Chu Xiao nodded. If that was the case, it seemed that he still had to take action. Chu Xiao had coveted the cultivation method in Qiu Zhenxing's hands for a long time, and he did not intend to share it with others. After getting the news, he went to Cheng Zhouhai and the others and said, "Everyone, now that the task in Eastern Qi has been completed, you can go back to the Guanzhong torture room to report." When Cheng Zhouhai heard Chu Xiao say, "You," he could not help but feel puzzled and asked, "Aren't you going back?" Chu Xiao said lightly, "Although the Eastern Qi Imperial Court said that the case has been closed and the task has been completed, there are still some minor flaws that need to be dealt with at the end. I don't need your help with these." I can handle it myself, and I will go back soon. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Cheng Zhouhai understood that Chu Xiu still had some personal affairs that needed to be dealt with, but he just wanted to use the Guanzhong torture room as a cover. This kind of thing was harmless. They were not Wang Qianping, who had to make things difficult for Chu Xiu. Making things convenient for others was also convenient for oneself, so Cheng Zhouhai and the others said directly, "Well, we will wait for you in the Guanzhong torture room, Brother Chu. Brother Chu, please rest assured that we will not speak carelessly when we report the situation of the case." Brother Chu, no one can take away your credit. If they went back together, it would naturally be Chu Xiu who would report the situation to Guan Xiu. But now that Chu Xiu was going back a little later, Guan Xiu would certainly ask them first. However, they did not want to become enemies with Chu Xiu, so they naturally would not trick Chu Xiu in this kind of thing. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I trust the characters of Brother Cheng and the others. In that case, I will take my leave for now." After that, Chu Xiu immediately went to Qiuzhenxing's manor to find Qiu Dongmao. At this time, Qiuzhenxing's manor was still sealed by the Dragon Rider's imperial army. At present, the matter with Jiang Wenyuan had been resolved, but it was still unknown how to deal with the Pegasus pasture, so the place was still in a state of lockdown. Seeing Chu Xiu arrive, the Dragon Rider's imperial army guarding the gate cupped his hands at Chu Xiu and said, "Official Chu." The Dragon Rider's imperial army also knew that Chu Xiu had also participated in the battle to kill Jiang Wenyuan. Moreover, he seemed to have a good relationship with their general Fang Zhenqi. Therefore, the Dragon Rider's imperial army was very polite to Chu Xiu. Looking around, Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Where are Qiu Dongmao and the others?" The Dragon Rider imperial army shook his head and said, "I don't know. Yesterday, he was here to keep watch for his father. However, after learning of Jiang Wenyuan's death, he left with the 5 heroes of Jiangdong overnight." Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Left? Where did they go?" The Dragon Rider imperial army said, looking at the direction, "It should be the west. I heard them say that they wanted to hurry to the Black Glazed City in the west as soon as possible." Black Glazed City? What was Qiu Dongmao doing there? Half of this so-called Black Glazed City was actually a mine. Its most famous production was a strange gemstone called Black Glazed. It was cold all over and could be used as a precious ornament. It could also be used to set up formations and was very expensive. In Chu Xiu's opinion, Qiu Dongmao should have either returned to Shangyang or went to Eastern Qi's Great Liang City to seek refuge with the Crown Prince. Why would he go there? But then Chu Xiu realized that Qiu Dongmao had gone to Black Glazed City to seek refuge with the Crown Prince. The princes of Eastern Qi all had considerable power and each had their own fiefdoms. If Chu Xiu remembered correctly, Black Glazed City was one of the Crown Prince's fiefdoms. Shangyang was used by Qiuzhenxing to settle Qiu Dongmao. Naturally, he didn't want to go back. In Great Liang City, the Crown Prince was reprimanded by the Emperor of Eastern Qi, Lu Haochang. He was now in closed-door meditation. Qiu Dongmao's identity was a little sensitive, so he naturally didn't want to see Qiu Dongmao. Black Glazed City was the Crown Prince's fiefdom and the place where Black Glazed was produced. It could be said that it was very important to the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince had a lot of power there. If Qiu Dongmao went there, his safety would be guaranteed. At the same time, the Crown Prince would have to arrange an escape route for him. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. Qiu Dongmao was quite smart. He must have sensed some danger and left in a hurry. But how could Chu Xiu let go of something that he had his eyes on so easily? Qiu Dongmao wouldn't be able to escape from Chu Xiu's palm. At this time, on the way to Black Glazed City, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong escorted Qiu Dongmao all the way to Black Glazed City. This was also the last time they would escort Qiu Dongmao. This time, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong came here for 2 reasons. One was to protect Qiu Dongmao, the only son of their benefactor, and the other was to avenge their benefactor, Qiuzhenxing. But now that the Eastern Qi Imperial Court had announced that Prince Anil, Jiang Wenyuan, had colluded with diabolism to kill Qiuzhenxing, they naturally didn't need to avenge Qiu Dongmao. They could leave after escorting Qiu Dongmao on his last journey. Qiu Dongmao walked in a hurry along the way as if someone was chasing him. In fact, he was afraid. He knew that Jiang Wenyuan and the Crown Prince were working together. But he never expected that the people from the Guanzhong torture room would find out about the Crown Prince and directly take down Jiang Wenyuan. Since the Guanzhong torture room could find out about Jiang Wenyuan, would they find out about him too? Qiu Dongmao couldn't guarantee this. Especially the leader of the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu. Every time he saw Chu Xiu, Qiu Dongmao felt a sense of fear. In front of him, he seemed to be naked and could be seen through at any time. So after receiving the news of Jiang Wenyuan's death and the destruction of Prince Annal's residence, Qiu Dongmao secretly sent a message to the Crown Prince. The person told him not to come to Daliang City, but to go to Black Glazed City first. Once there, the Crown Prince would make arrangements. Of course, the actual situation was that the Crown Prince, LV Longji, was a little overwhelmed. He didn't have the time to care about Qiu Dongmao. He would first throw Qiu Dongmao to Black Glaze City. But at this time, among the people who had been quietly rushing along, Wu Tiandong suddenly asked curiously, "Young Master Qiu, why are you in such a hurry to go to Black Glazed City?" Chapter 294. The Jiangdong Five Heroes had a good impression of Qiu Dongmao. In their eyes, Qiu Dongmao was humble, polite, and filial. Apart from his slightly weaker strength, he was far better than Qiu Zhensheng's eldest son, Qiu Dongning. They had gotten along well on the way to the Ji State Prefecture, so when Qiu Dongmao mentioned going to Glazed Ink City, they agreed without hesitation. Under Qiu Dongmao's urging, they did not even ask why Qiu Dongmao was in such a hurry. Now that Wu Tiandong asked, the others also looked at Qiu Dongmao with curious eyes. Qiu Dongmao didn't panic in the face of everyone's stares. After such a long time, he had already thought of an excuse. Qiu Dongmao sighed and said, "In fact, when Jiang Wenyuan died, I had already guessed the cause of my father's death. My father was not killed by Jiang Wenyuan, but by the internal strife of the Eastern Qi royal family. My father was the owner of the Pegasus farm and was very important to Eastern Qi, so both the Crown Prince and the Second Prince wanted to recruit my father. However, my father was very strict with the rules. The Crown Prince was the heir, so he naturally had to stand on the Crown Prince's side. As a result, the Second Prince bore a grudge against him. Not only did he send someone to kill my father, he even invited Chu Xiu from the Guanzhong torture room to distort the truth. Chu Xiu had secretly come to the Zhuangzi and secretly contacted General Fang Zhenqi of the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army. Fang Zhenqi was one of the Second Prince's men. You know what happened next. Under the Second Prince's schemes, Prince Annal, Jiang Wenyuan, was killed, and the Crown Prince was reprimanded by His Majesty and ordered to go into seclusion. The ones who really benefited were the Second Prince and Chu Xiu. You all know Prince Annal's reputation. He was kind and courteous. How could he have colluded with demons and killed my father? All of this was just an excuse. Now that King Enlu is dead and His Highness the Crown Prince is heavily injured, I'm worried that the Second Prince's subordinates will collude with Chu Xiu and attack me. That's why I left in a hurry, wanting to go to Glazed Ink City. That is the Crown Prince's fief and is protected by many masters under the Crown Prince's command. Neither the Second Prince nor Chu Xiu would dare to act rashly. Qiu Dongmao was a genius. In a short period of time, he had thought of all these excuses and completely turned the situation around. Everything he said was the truth, but everyone's standpoint had changed completely, so it seemed abnormally real. Furthermore, Qiu Dongmao was right. The Crown Prince had indeed been reprimanded and reprimanded. Chu Xiu had indeed come to the manor that day and had a secret meeting with Fang Zhenqi. They had all seen it. As for Jiang Wenyuan, he had a good reputation in the martial arts world of Eastern Qi. Most importantly, Jiang Wenyuan was famous for being courteous and courteous. At least for most of the individual cultivators and warriors, Prince Annal was indeed a man worth following. The five freaks of Jiangdong also admired Jiang Wenyuan's reputation. If they were not motivated to be chivalrous and help the needy, they might have joined Jiang Wenyuan's team. This time, when they heard that Chu Xiu killed Jiang Wenyuan, their hatred for Chu Xiu deepened. However, Because the Eastern Qi Imperial Court announced that Jiang Wenyuan had colluded with demons, Chu Xiu's killing of Jiang Wenyuan was for the martial arts world. This made them have no excuse to curse Chu Xiu in secret. Now, according to Qiu Dongmao, all of this was a conspiracy between the second prince and Chu Xiu. The 5 freaks of Jiangdong looked at each other. They did not expect that things would change in this way. Qiu Zhenxing's death was involved in the internal strife of the royal family of Eastern Qi. The few of them were all rogue cultivators. Their strength was not bad, but they had never seen such a big scene. They had only heard of the drama of the royal family's internal strife in movies. They did not expect to encounter it themselves. Cheng Buhui sighed and said, "Master Qiu, please restrain your grief. I only regret that we are not capable enough to avenge our benefactor." According to Qiu Zhenxing, the real murderer was the second prince, but they could not really kill the second prince of Eastern Qi and then be hunted by the whole world, could they? Moreover, even if they wanted to, they did not have the strength to do so. Qiu Dongmao shook his head with red eyes and said, "Don't worry, Master Cheng. His Royal Highness is a generous man. When His Royal Highness ascends the throne in the future, he will avenge my father." Cheng Buhui nodded and looked at the sky. "It's getting late. If I remember correctly, there is an inn in front. Let's go and have a rest." Qiu Dongmao gave it some thought and nodded in agreement. He was very anxious when he left a few days ago, afraid that Chu Xiu would find him. However, he heard from some travelers that the Eastern Qi royal family had closed the case and confirmed that Qiu Zhenxing was killed by Jiang Wenyuan. If that was the case, did it mean that he was safe for the time being? Moreover, he did not see anyone chasing after him for the past few days, which made Qiu Dongmao feel relieved. It was time for him to rest. Cheng Buhui and the others were all at the 5 Qis collecting in the Origin Realm and the 3 Flowers at Prominence Realm. It would not be a problem for them to travel for a month, let alone a few days. However, Qiu Dongmao was only at the Blood Condensation Realm, and his own strength was very weak. A few days of continuous travel was already too much for him. After walking along the official road for less than an hour, there was indeed a small inn on the side. Cheng Buhui and the others pushed the door open and entered. There were not many people, only some traveling merchants and some lone cultivators. Seeing Cheng Buhui and the others come in, the eyes of the people in the inn suddenly lit up. A few people took the initiative to come over and salute. "May I ask if you are the 5 heroes of Jiangdong?" Cheng Buhui and the others smiled and saluted, "Yes." Qiu Dongmao frowned slightly behind them. He still did not want them to reveal their whereabouts. If there were really people following them, it would be easy to find out their whereabouts from these lone cultivators. However, since Cheng Buhui and the others had already spoken, he could not stop them. The few lone cultivators were immediately overjoyed when they heard this. They said, "I have long heard of the famous 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Now that I have seen you today, you 5 heroes are indeed extraordinary. We are truly blessed." As they spoke, they immediately began to flatter them. Not only were Cheng Buhui and the others famous in the land of Jiangdong, but they were also quite famous in Eastern Qi. Moreover, the 5 of them had such unique characteristics that they were easily recognized. Some of these unaffiliated martial artists had not even reached the innate realm. If they went to greet other martial artists in the 3-Flower realm or the 5 Qis gathering in the Origin realm, they would probably be ignored. However, Cheng Buhui and the others were also unaffiliated martial artists, so they did not have that many bad habits. They were very friendly and greeted everyone one by one. Seeing the attitude of Cheng Buhui and the others, the lone cultivators present were also amazed. As expected of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, just their temperament alone was different from other martial artists. After exchanging greetings with the martial artists present, Cheng Buhui immediately ordered a pile of food and asked the innkeeper to book a few superior rooms for them so that they could rest after the meal. However, just as they were about to finish their meal, the door of the inn was suddenly pushed open. A cold aura with the smell of blood suddenly drifted inside, causing everyone present to shiver uncontrollably. "Qiu Dongmao, you have quite an appetite. Your father's body is still warm, and he has not been buried yet. Instead of burying him, you are still in the mood to eat here." You sure have a big heart. A figure stepped into the inn. His black clothes seemed to have merged with the night outside. Even the long saber at his waist was surrounded by pitch-black demonic qi, exuding a sense of deathly stillness. Chu Xiu! Qiu Dongmao exclaimed, and the chopsticks in his hand fell to the ground. When everyone present heard the two words, Chu Xiu, they could not help but shiver. Today, not only did they see the famous 5 heroes of Jiangdong in Eastern Qi, but they also saw the infamous Chu Xiu in the land of Eastern Qi. What day was today? Why did they all come here? It had not been long since the God Weapon Conference. The deeds that Chu Xiu had done in the Ji State Prefecture were still circulating in the land of Eastern Qi. To exaggerate, his reputation in Eastern Qi was even greater than in Guangzhou. The moment he saw Chu Xiu, Cheng Buhui immediately pulled out the heavy sword on his back. The other 4 also pulled out their weapons and looked at Chu Xiu with vigilance. Looking at the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, Chu Xiu said calmly, "Do you know who you are protecting now? He is a guy who dared to poison his own father and wanted to kill his own brother to take over the throne. He is a cruel and merciless man. Qiu Zhenxing's case is not over yet." Although Qiu Zhenxing died in the hands of Jiang Wenyuan, young Master Qiu added fuel to the fire. Now, on behalf of the Guangzhou torture room and the Eastern Qi Imperial Court, I want to arrest him and bring him to justice. By protecting him, are you going against the order of the Eastern Qi Imperial Court? Wu Tiandong sneered and said, "Chu Xiu, we already know the truth. You can fool others with your high-sounding reasons, but don't try to fool us." Cheng Buhui also said in a low voice, "Chu Xiu, when it's possible to let someone off, one should spare them. You've already obtained enough by cooperating with the second prince. Prince Enlu is dead, and His Highness the Crown Prince has been punished by His Majesty. You've already obtained enough rewards. At present, young Master Qiu is no longer a threat to you. He is just the last bloodline of our benefactor. Do you really have to kill him?" Hearing the specious words of Cheng Buhui and the others, Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and looked at Qiu Dongmao. This guy must have said something to the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, otherwise, the 5 of them would not have such an attitude. At this time, Qiu Dongmao also looked at Chu Xiu fearlessly. He was not afraid that Chu Xiu would tell the truth. First impressions were the strongest. Would the 5 heroes of Jiangdong believe him, who had always been on good terms with them, or would they believe Chu Xiu, who was notorious and had conflicts with them? There was no doubt about it. Chapter 295. The conversation between Chu Xiu, Cheng Buhui, and the others left everyone dumbfounded. They seemed to have heard something extraordinary. What they had talked about before was actually related to the recent case of Qiu Zhenxing, the owner of the Pegasus Ranch, the struggle between the princes of Eastern Qi, and the death of Jiang Wenyuan, the prince of Anil. It sounded like something extraordinary. They did not even dare to listen to such a big gossip. Chu Xiu squinted at Qiu Zhenxing and said lightly, "You are clever. These 5 stupid guys have been fooled by you, haven't they? Since you are prepared, I will also give you a chance. I can promise not to kill you, but you have to tell me where all the things left by Qiu Zhenxing are. Jiang Wenyuan sent someone to kill Qiu Zhenxing, and I killed Jiang Wenyuan. It can be regarded as revenge for him. It is reasonable for me to ask for some compensation, isn't it?" Qiu Dongmao was taken aback. He had thought that Chu Xiu had been sent by the second prince to kill him, or that the matter of him giving the Qiu family July begonia had been exposed. But now, it seemed that Chu Xiu had acted on his own. Even so, Qiu Dongmao did not intend to admit it. Now that Qiu Zhenxing was dead, as the only son of Qiu Zhenxing, those things would naturally be left to him. These were one of his future assets. How could he just give them to Chu Xiu? Moreover, he did not know whether Chu Xiu was telling the truth or not. Even if Chu Xiu was telling the truth and he admitted it, the 5 people around him might immediately attack and directly tear him into pieces. Although the 5 heroes of Jiangdong were benevolent and righteous, they were warriors who had been in Jianghu for so many years and had killed many people. If they found out that he was lying to them, there was no need to think about what would happen to him next. However, before Qiu Dongmao could speak, Wu Tiandong had already pointed at Chu Xiu with a knife and shouted, Bastard. Who are you calling an idiot? Chu Xiu said lightly, don't add drama. I didn't say that you are idiots. I just said that you are a little stupid. Although Wu Tiandong did not know what drama meant, he could tell from Chu Xiu's attitude and voice that what Chu Xiu said was probably not good. Qiu Dongmao pulled Wu Tiandong aside and said to Chu Xiu in a deep voice, Chu Xiu, you don't have to lie to me. I've already told the heroes about your conspiracy with the second prince. Don't even think about doing anything about it. Now that my father's body is still cold, I naturally feel guilty, but if I continue to stay in G state, I will have to go to the underworld to accompany my father. But now I have the protection of the five, Shu Xiu and you Xiu king and Xiu and Xiu. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. In fact, I will not do things to the extreme every time. This time I gave you a chance, but you did not cherish it. You can't blame me for this. He pulled out the heavenly demon dance from his waist, and in an instant, the cold devil chi lingered in the entire inn, causing the other warriors in the inn to immediately retreat in panic. If they were seriously injured because of watching the show, it would not be worth it. In fact, this time, Chu Xiu was really going to give Qiu Dongmao a chance, because he only wanted the martial arts in Qiu Zhenxing's hands. As for other things, Chu Xiu was not interested. Maybe before Qiu Zhenxing died, he did not expect that the martial arts he accidentally obtained would have such power. Qiu Dongmao naturally did not know, and Chu Xiu was not worried that he would leak anything. As long as the other party was willing to cooperate obediently, Chu Xiu did not mind letting him live. But it was a pity that Qiu Dongmao chose a dead end, so he could not blame Chu Xiu for being cruel and merciless. Seeing Chu Xiu pull out his saber, Cheng Buhui and the other four immediately stood in front of Qiu Dongmao, not retreating at all. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, are you really going to stop me? You should know that behind me stands the Guanzhong torture room and the Eastern Qi Imperial Court. I said that Qiu Dongmao was one of the murderers of Qiu Zhenxing. No matter whether there is evidence or not, the Eastern Qi Imperial Court will believe it, the Guanzhong torture room will believe it, and so will the people in Jianghu. Now, only you don't believe it. In the end, the reputation of the 5 freaks of River East will be ruined as well. Cheng Buhui said in a low voice, when the 5 of us became sworn brothers, we once said that when we see injustice, we do chivalry and help the weak. What we seek is not fame, but peace of mind. The title of the 5 freaks of River East is not what we want. We are all people in Jianghu who favor us. Now if they want to take it back, we have no objection, as long as we have a clear conscience. The person I, Cheng Buhui, admire the most in this life is the previous hall master of the Guanzhong torture room, great hero Chu Kuanga. He used martial arts to stop war. Even if there were millions of people, he would still go forward. But you, Chu Xiu, are now using the name of the Guanzhong torture room for your own selfish desires. You are blinded by greed and indiscriminately killed the innocent. You are not a member of the Guanzhong torture room. Chu Xiu shook his head. Stubborn and stubborn. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu's body moved. Without any warning, he slashed towards the 5 of them with his saber. The surging demonic aura was mixed with boundless blood qi. The might of this attack was simply extremely demonic. Cheng Buhui shouted, Lao Er, Lao San, you too attack. As soon as he finished speaking, second brother, Dong Xiangyi, and third brother, Blood Avoidance Sword, Lu Tong, had already rushed out. Cheng Buhui had seen Chu Xiu attack before. Although the 4th prince, Wu Tiandong, was not the top among those in the 3-flower realm, he was still not bad. However, he could not even block one move from Chu Xiu. Therefore, this time, Cheng Buhui did not want Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing, who were both in the 3-flower realm, to attack. Instead, he asked second brother and third brother, who were in the 5 Qis origin realm, to attack. He stayed in the back to coordinate, afraid that other pursuers would come. The 5 freaks of River East were so famous in the land of Eastern Qi not only because of their chivalrous deeds, but also because they were not weak themselves. The weapon in second brother, Dong Xiangyi's hand was very strange. He usually held a fan and wore a brocade robe, looking like the son of an aristocratic family. But at this time, when he attacked, blood-colored blades shot out from the folding fan. When they flew across the sky, the blood-colored gang qi extended for dozens of feet. Dong Xiangyi's accumulation of gang qi was also extremely powerful. He had almost reached the peak of the 5 qis collecting in mind. As for third brother, Blood Avoidance Sword, Lu Tong, his attack was a standard swordsman style. His sword technique was fast and strange. He stabbed out with a thin sword in his hand, and the sword momentum was so fast that it was impossible to see the traces. In all fairness, these two people were not weak. Chu Xiu had also fought against martial artists in the 5 qis origin realm, such as Wei Mok from the 9 Plains Wei family. However, in terms of strength, Dong Xiangyi and Lu Tong were both above Wei Mok. Chu Xiu pinched the internal binding seal and quickly retreated. As soon as Lu Tong's extremely fast sword momentum missed, the folding fan in Dong Xiangyi's hand came over with an extremely sharp blood-colored gang qi. However, this time, Chu Xiu did not retreat. The heavenly demon dance in his hand drew a magnificent arc. The blood-refined divine aura contained pure demonic qi, which directly shattered Dong Xiangyi's gang qi. Dong Xiangyi slashed out with his long saber and waved the folding fan in his hand. Blood-colored gang qi turned into a hurricane cyclone and stopped in front of him. Although he was forced to retreat by Chu Xiu's attacks, he still managed to block Chu Xiu's attacks. However, at this time, Dong Xiangyi's expression was very ugly. One had to know that he was in the 5 qis origin realm, while Chu Xiu was in the 3-flower realm, which was 1 realm lower than him. In the end, he was the one being suppressed. How aggrieved was this? Right at this moment, a wave of killing intent came from behind Chu Xiu. Lu Tong's figure shot out explosively towards Chu Xiu like an arrow. His entire person and the sword in his hand seemed to have fused into one, making him extremely sharp and filled with boundless killing intent. Chu Xiu turned around and pinched a seal with his hand. The wisdom fist seal covered all directions, and heaven and earth were useless. In an instant, the stellar energy around Chu Xiu's body began to stagnate. LV Tong's extremely swift sword momentum and his sharp sword intent were consumed by the inescapable net laid out by the wisdom fist seal. The originally extremely swift attack now seemed to be in slow motion. Chu Xiu turned around and slashed with his sword. The Avicii Hell's devil chi roared out and directly blasted Lu Tong away. Fang Buhui, who was standing behind, frowned. Back in the God Weapon Conference, he was famous in the pugilistic world and ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu list. He truly deserved his reputation. He had underestimated Chu Xiu. As a 3-flower realm martial artist in the 5 qis origin realm, and 1 against 2, Chu Xiu was not at a disadvantage at all. Instead, he seemed to be at ease. This kind of strength could be said to be terrifying. Cheng Buhui said to Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing in a deep voice, "You two protect young Master Qiu. I'll do it." As soon as he finished speaking, Cheng Buhui directly took out the heavy sword on his back. The sword fell to the ground, and everyone could feel the ground tremble. The lone cultivators present were secretly speechless. What was this heavy sword made of? It didn't look too exaggerated, so why was it so heavy? Cheng Buhui held the sword with both hands and directly slashed at Chu Xiu. Ordinary swords were used to stab, and their main purpose was to be sharp and agile. However, this heavy sword in Cheng Buhui's hands was like a large machete. It was extremely heavy. With just a simple move, splitting Huashan Mountain, there was no release of vigor qi. Instead, the plain and invisible vigor qi condensed on the body of his sword. It condensed and did not dissipate, as if it was real. As the sword fell, the surrounding air seemed to be compressed. With a heavy force, it made a violent sonic boom. Chu Xiu also felt the power of Cheng Buhui's sword. His figure moved, and his hand formed the inner binding seal. His figure quickly retreated, and in the blink of an eye, he was already outside the inn. When Cheng Buhui's sword fell to the ground, everyone in the inn suddenly felt as if they had experienced an earthquake. The sword directly cut a huge pit several meters wide in the ground. The cracks were densely packed, and they directly extended outside the inn. The front half of the inn's door directly shattered with a loud bang. At that moment, Chu Xiu's voice came from outside. 5 heroes of Jiangdong, are you determined to protect Qiu Dongmao? Don't worry, the show hasn't started yet. I hope you won't regret it in the future. Chapter 296. Cheng Buhui stood in the lobby of the inn, leaning on his heavy sword. His eyes were filled with seriousness. Chu Xiu's words were filled with a dense coldness that actually made him feel a chill even though it wasn't cold. However, the only good thing about the fight just now was that they were sure that Chu Xiu was the only one who came after them. In that situation, Chu Xiu could easily deal with the two of them. If he had brought the other martial artists from the Guanzhong torture room or the people from Eastern Qi, the 5 of them would not have been able to stop him. Looking at the destroyed inn, Cheng Buhui put his hand into his pocket, but his face was filled with embarrassment. Qiu Dongmao was very perceptive. Seeing this, he immediately took out a banknote and stuffed it into the innkeeper's hand. He cupped his hands and said, "I'm really sorry for damaging your inn. Take this as a reward." The innkeeper looked at the amount on the banknote and nodded with a smile. "It's enough. Thank you, young master." The banknote that Qiu Dongmao took out was enough to buy his inn, let alone compensate for his loss. The rest of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes had a better impression of Qiu Dongmao when they saw this. In fact, the Jiangdong's 5 heroes were living a rather shabby life. After all, they were all rogue cultivators, and they were motivated to be chivalrous and help the needy. Basically, they did not have much income. Most of their income came from killing some villains or robbers, or exterminating some bandits and the like, and robbing some things from them. However, they had to keep the cultivation resources that they had robbed for themselves. After all, they were also martial artists, and they needed a lot of resources to increase their cultivation speed. However, some of the gold, silver, and other treasures were exchanged for money and given to the poor. It could be considered as robbing the rich to help the poor, so they lived a very simple life. Cheng Buhui coughed and said, "Chu Xiu is alone now, but I can't guarantee that there's someone behind him. To avoid any trouble, let's leave now." The others nodded and immediately turned around to leave. The other rogue cultivators in the inn looked at each other. Chu Xiu, who was ranked 6th on the Longhu leaderboard, was going against the 5 heroes of River East. This was a big deal. If they sold this news to the wind-sweeping tower, they might be able to make a small profit. Of course, no one cared about Qiu Dongmao, who was the main target. In front of Chu Xiu and the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, Qiu Dongmao was just a supporting character. After fleeing through the night, another day passed. Cheng Buhui and the others were able to hold on, but after midnight, Qiu Dongmao was already exhausted. Even though the others were carrying Qiu Dongmao on their backs, he was unable to hold on. Therefore, after nightfall, Cheng Buhui did not sense any trace of Chu Xiu. He heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Let's take a break and eat something." Hearing Cheng Buhui's words, the others also found a big tree and rested behind it. They lit a bonfire and roasted their rations. At this time, they were not afraid of being discovered by Chu Xiu, because they did not hide their traces along the way. Anyway, Chu Xiu's strength was obvious, and he was only one person. They only needed to protect Qiu Dongmao from being killed. Next to the bonfire, Wu Tiandong finished roasting a pancake and handed it to Lu Qingqing. "Fifth sister, eat something." The others also knew that Wu Tiandong admired Lu Qingqing, but no one said anything. They were used to it anyway. Lu Qingqing took the pancake and smiled. "Thank you, fourth brother." Although she was a woman, she had already adapted to this kind of wandering life after following others around for so many years. Therefore, she did not mind it and directly picked up the pancake to eat. Wu Tiandong leaned against Lu Qingqing and said, "Fifth sister, after eating, rest for a while. With the 5 of us here, Chu Xiu will not dare to make a move." Lu Qingqing shook her head. "No need, I am not that delicate." Just at this time, Lu Qingqing suddenly lowered her voice and transmitted her voice. "Fourth brother, since Qiu Dongmao said that he is on the Crown Prince's side, then when we go to Glazed Ink City this time, will we also join the Crown Prince?" Wu Tiandong said in surprise, "Fifth sister, Why do you think so? Lu Qingqing looked at the sky and said in a downcast tone, "We have been sworn brothers for so many years and have also roamed the Jianghu for so many years. We can be considered to have some fame. However, fame is fame, and we are still considered young. But what about 10 years later, 20 years later? Are we going to continue like this? Sometimes we women think more than you men do." Wu Tiandong hesitated. "I have not really thought about this, but I will listen to Big Brother. Whatever Big Brother wants me to do, I will do it." Wu Tiandong was a little rash and impulsive, so most of the time he would only listen to Qing Buhui. Anyway, in his opinion, what Big Brother said must be right. As long as he listened to Big Brother, then he would not be wrong. It was that simple. Lu Qingqing forced a smile. Wu Tiandong did not realize that in fact, no matter what kind of woman they would not like an impulsive and brainless man who did not have any opinions of his own. Cheng Buhui and the others did not pay attention to the secret transmission between the two of them. Anyway, everyone knew about Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing, so they thought that he was whispering sweet nothings to Lu Qingqing. However, Cheng Buhui and the others did not know that Chu Xiu's figure was on a big tree 100 feet away from them. His black clothes were hidden in the night, and his eyes shone with a deep and cold light. It was indeed very troublesome for him to deal with the 5 heroes of Jiangdong alone. When they fought in the inn before, he had already come up with a countermeasure. If he fought with all his strength, it would not be a problem for him to kill the second brother, Dong Xiangyi, and the third brother, Lu Tong. However, if Cheng Buhui joined in, Chu Xiu would almost certainly lose. Cheng Buhui's strength was probably only one step away from the oneness of heaven and man state. If he fought Cheng Buhui one-on-one, Chu Xiu was not sure that he could win. Although Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing's strength was not great, they were not wooden blocks. If they secretly attacked from the side, they would still be able to cause a lot of damage to Chu Xiu. Therefore, Chu Xiu had never considered fighting them head-on, and he did not plan to find someone to help him. With Chu Xiu's connections in Eastern Qi, he could find Immortal Lin. However, this time, he mainly came for Qiu Zhenxing's cultivation method. He had no intention of sharing it with anyone else. Since they could not be defeated from the outside, he would let them rot from the inside. The identities and secrets of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong were very interesting. In the original plot, it would be a very exciting drama. Now, Chu Xiu did not mind letting the drama play out earlier. After eating the cake, Lu Qingqing stood up and said, "I'm going to relieve myself." Cheng Buhui said, "Be careful. Don't go too far. Let fourth brother go with you." Wu Tiandong immediately stood up and said, "Leave it to me." He had fought with Chu Xiu before. Although he knew that he was no match for Chu Xiu would not be able to kill him in a second. He was not that useless. Cheng Buhui nodded and did not care. The 5 of them were here. As long as Lu Qingqing did not go too far, they would be able to help in time if Chu Xiu attacked. No matter how strong Chu Xiu was, he was not strong enough to kill them in a second. Lu Qingqing also knew the severity of the situation. She did not know where Chu Xiu was now, so she naturally would not go too far. They were all from Jianghu, not a noble family, so there was no need to be so particular. Therefore, Lu Qingqing only walked about 60 meters away. However, when she saw that Wu Tiandong was still following her, Lu Qingqing could not help but say, "Why are you still following me? Do you want to take a look?" Wu Tiandong's face turned red. He scratched his head and said, "I'll go somewhere further and help you guard it." As he spoke, Wu Tiandong moved another 30 meters away and stood under a tree with his back facing Lu Qingqing. However, at this moment, a low, mocking voice suddenly sounded. "Tiske, it seems that you really think of Lu Qingqing as a goddess. You can't even bear to blaspheme her. However, you should know that there are many people who have visited her place, and they are all your acquaintances." Chu Xiu. Wu Tiandong was instantly shocked. His hand subconsciously grasped his autumn moon blade and he wanted to shout. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu did not attack. He only made a shushing gesture and said indifferently, "Don't make a sound. I did not want to attack. Otherwise, I would have attacked long ago. Don't you want to hear some secrets about your 5th sister?" Wu Tiandong's hand gradually loosened, and he swallowed the words that he was about to shout. At this moment, Chu Xiu restrained his aura and even crossed his arms in front of his chest. He indeed had no intention of attacking. Otherwise, with Chu Xiu's strength, he would be at a disadvantage even if he was not seriously injured by a sneak attack. Thinking of what Chu Xiu had said just now, Wu Tiandong frowned and said in a low voice, "What did you mean just now?" Chu Xiu smiled. "What did I mean? You really are very simple. Don't tell me that after so many years in the martial world, you are still a virgin. Are you really going to preserve your yang energy and cultivate the virgin technique?" Wu Tiandong's face showed a trace of embarrassment and anger. He said angrily, "Chu Xiu, what do you mean?" Chu Xiu spread out his hands. "Don't mind me, I was just joking just now. But what if I said that the fifth sister you have always admired, the goddess in your heart, the existence that even you can't bear to blaspheme, has an affair with all three of your sworn brothers? What would you do?" Wu Tiandong's eyes widened when he heard this. He directly grasped his autumn moon blade and shouted angrily in a low voice, "Nonsense!" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Don't get agitated. Listen to me carefully. If you attract others, you won't be able to hear the rest of the exciting content." Chapter 297. Wu Tiandong held his saber with both hands and stared at Chu Xiu. He didn't believe what Chu Xiu had said at all. The 5 siblings had become sworn siblings, and everyone had taken good care of Lu Qingqing. That was true, but it was the kind of care an older brother would give to his younger sister. It definitely didn't include any romantic feelings. Moreover, after so many years, how could he not know his siblings as well as an outsider like Chu Xiu? Wu Tiandong said coldly, "Chu Xiu, you can't beat us in a head-on fight, so you want to use this kind of conspiracy to sow discord between us. Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you think I'll believe what you say?" Chu Xiu said slowly, "Although the 5 of you have become sworn siblings, you've known each other at different times. 10 years ago, there was no such thing as the Jiangdong 5 heroes. At that time, only Qing Buhui, Lu Tong, and Lu Qingqing knew each other. Lu Qingqing came from a small family and was weak. She was almost used as a marriage tool to marry a cripple. It was Qing Buhui who saved her. Beauties love heroes. Qing Buhui was a hero in front of Lu Qingqing, and he appeared when she was at her most desperate. What do you think she would think? Therefore, Lu Qingqing had taken the initiative to pursue Qing Buji since then. However, she was rejected by Qing Buji because he had great ambitions and did not want to be tied down by love. But the goddess in your heart is very bold. When Qing Buhui rejected her, she took the initiative to climb into his bed. Qing Buhui is also a normal man. What do you think he would do?" Chu Xiu looked at Wu Tiandong with a strange smile, but Wu Tiandong gritted his teeth and said, "You're talking nonsense." Chu Xiu said lightly, "You can ask Lu Tong if I'm talking nonsense. He's one of the people who knows about this." However, Qing Buhui really had a heart of stone. She had already given her body to him, but he did not relent. Instead, he acknowledged Lu Qingqing as his sister. This was not a bad idea. Right? Speaking of LV Tong, this person was very innocent. He really did not have any feelings for Lu Qingqing, but 7 years ago, Qing Buhui and the other 2 had joined forces to capture the rapist, thousand-faced jade fox, Song Sangchong. In the end, the 3 of them had been separated. Although LV Tong had killed Song Sangchong, he had been poisoned by the other party, and if he did not vent it, his meridians would be damaged. That 5th sister of yours is really loyal. She only needed to carry the other party for 2 hours to reach the brothel in the prefecture mansion, but she insisted on doing it herself. TSK, she's really loyal. Haven't you noticed that even though Lu Tong is your sworn brother, he treats everyone coldly except Lu Qingqing? It's not because she's the youngest among you." Wu Tiandong's face was livid. He did not know what happened 7 years ago because he did not know Qing Buhui and the others at that time. In the past, Wu Tiandong did not find anything wrong, but now listening to Chu Xiu's words and the details of their previous interactions, he could not help but have some doubts. Chu Xiu continued, "As for the last one, Dong Xiangyi, he is much simpler. Do you think he is a rogue cultivator? In fact, your second brother is a genuine descendant of an aristocratic family. He is elegant and well-versed in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. His strength is second only to Qingbu Hui. Isn't such a man attractive enough to women? It's a pity that your second brother has been through thousands of flowers, but not a single leaf has landed on him. There are countless women who have slept with him, but none of them have truly become his one and only woman. Didn't you notice that when you first met these people, Lu Qingqing's attitude towards your second brother was a little different from the others? After saying all this, Chu Xiu also felt that Lu Qingqing was a strange woman. It was not wrong to say that she was a fickle woman. She just chose what most women would do, which was to choose a sufficiently outstanding and strong person to be her partner. Chengbu Hui was outstanding and strong enough, but unfortunately, his heart could not contain any woman. Dong Xiangyi's character meant that the women who could catch his eye were often more outstanding than him. Lu Qingqing could not do it, so she could only be his younger sister. As for Lu Tong's incident, the original plot did not explain clearly what had happened, but there was a high probability that it was an accident. Lu Qingqing had only just begun to roam the world at that time, and it was very likely that she was so anxious that she forgot about other methods. Of course, this was something Chu Xiu would not say. Lu Qingqing's incident was normal in other places, but the mistake was that she had slept with the other members of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes. According to the normal development of the plot, Lu Qingqing would eventually agree to Wu Tiandong's passionate pursuit, and that would be the beginning of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes breakup. Lu Qingqing was just a prelude. The Jiangdong's 5 heroes were a group that had been praised by the people of Eastern Qi for so many years. Outsiders could not imagine how many secrets and cracks there were between them. In the original plot, Lu Qingqing was only the fuse that ignited this incident, but now, Chu Xiu had ignited it in advance. Nonsense. What you're saying is all nonsense. How could an outsider like you know these things? Wu Tiandong said through gritted teeth. Chu Xiu said lightly, if you don't want people to know, then don't do it. You guys, the Jiangdong's 5 heroes, have quite a reputation in Eastern Qi, and there are many people who pay attention to you. Jiang Wenyuan had wanted to recruit you previously, so he purposely gathered some information about you. You should know that I killed Jiang Wenyuan. As for these things, I found them when I was searching Prince in Li's mansion. Anyway, Jiang Wenyuan was dead now, and the entire Prince Anil residence had been emptied. Who knew what Chu Xiu had found in the Prince Anil residence? Looking at Wu Tiandong's livid expression, Chu Xiu said slowly, actually, you're right about one thing. I came here to tell you all this to provoke you guys. But think about it carefully, if you guys were really close, I wouldn't be able to provoke you guys. Anyway, I've said what I wanted to say. Whether you want to tell this to the others or not, it's up to you. With that, Chu Xiu retreated and disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind a gloomy Wu Tiandong. At this time, Lu Qingqing had finished peeing, but when she walked over, she saw that Wu Tiandong's expression was a little off. She couldn't help but ask, "Fourth brother, did something happen?" Wu Tiandong forced a smile and said, "It's nothing, let's go back." Lu Qingqing didn't mind and followed Wu Tiandong back. But at this time, Wu Tiandong was feeling more and more uncomfortable, and the way he looked at Qingbu Hui and the others was also a little unnatural. When he thought about how the woman he liked had slept with his best brothers, he felt as uncomfortable as if he had swallowed a fly. It was said that brothers were like hands and feet, and women were like clothes, but Wu Tiandong had not reached this level yet. Although he kept saying in his heart that all of this could be fake and that Chu Xiu had said it on purpose to sow discord between the brothers, he could not convince himself. In the end, Wu Tiandong even wanted to open his mouth and ask Qingbu Hui what was going on, but he didn't have the courage to ask this question. Because he was afraid that if he asked this question, he would really break off relations with his elder brother and the others. Just like that, he spent the whole night with these thoughts in his mind, and the next day, Qingbu Hui and the others set off again. Chu Xiu followed far behind Qingbu Hui and the others, but before they went to rest, Chu Xiu walked in front of them and left a few marks on their path. When night fell, Dong Xiangyi's expression changed when he saw the marks, but he didn't make a sound. Instead, he stood up and walked in the direction of the marks. When Cheng Buhui saw Dong Xiangyi leave, he thought that he was looking for a place to pee. Out of habit, Cheng Buhui reminded him, "Second brother, be careful. Don't let Chu Xiu sneak attack you." Dong Xiangyi nodded and said, "Don't worry, big brother. Although I can't defeat Chu Xiu, he can't sneak attack me in this situation." Although he said this casually, Dong Xiangyi's expression was slightly solemn. Looking at the hidden marks on the tree, Dong Xiangyi walked in one direction for hundreds of feet before the marks disappeared. He shouted in a low voice, "Chu Xiu, why did you use the Dong family to lure me out? Do you want to take them down one by one? Don't even think about it. If you dare to make a move, Big Brother and the others will come immediately, and don't think that you can kill me in a short time." Chu Xiu jumped down from the tree and said lightly, "I didn't lure you out, but there's something in your heart that you can't let go of. The people of Jianghu all think that you're a lone cultivator, but they don't know that you, a seemingly miserable lone cultivator, are actually a disciple of the Jiangling Dong family of West Chu, one of the 9 great families. The Dong family has a longer history than the royal family of West Chu. It has been around for thousands of years, and its bloodline is noble. How can those lone cultivators be compared to it?" Dong Xiangyi was very calm. He snorted and said, "So what? I'm a member of the Dong family, but that was many years ago. I have nothing to do with the Dong family now, and I've let go of everything in the past. Now I'm just Dong Xiangyi of the 5 heroes of River East, not a member of the Jiangling Dong family. Besides, is it shameful to be from the Dong family?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "Of course it's not shameful, but you're lying now. There are some things that you can't let go of, and you don't want to let go. Otherwise, when you discovered the mark I left behind, you could have told Cheng Buhui about it instead of coming to see me in secret. It turns out that you still care about your background. As a disciple of the Dong family of Jiangling, you're now one of the 5 heroes of River East, but I feel that your purpose doesn't seem to exist. Cheng Buhui and the others are motivated to be chivalrous and help the needy. As a young master from the Dong family of Jiangling, how can you have such a hobby? I'm afraid that's not all you want, right?" Chapter 298. Chu Xiu's words made Dong Xiangyi's face darken. He said coldly, "What do you mean?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "What I mean is very clear. Dong Xiangyi, your purpose is not pure. Among the 5 heroes of River East, the others may be worthy of the word hero, but you don't deserve it. Cheng Buhui's chivalry was to fulfill his life's wish, but you, on the other hand, are very utilitarian. You, Dong Xiangyi, were born in the Jiangling Dong family, and you were even a direct descendant. But because you fought with the young talents of the previous generation of the Dong family for the position of the heir, you were framed and punished by the family. You were so angry that you directly left the Dong family and wanted to make a name for yourself in the outside world. Then, you returned to the Dong family above board and told the people of the Dong family that they had made the wrong choice. At this time, you met Cheng Buhui and became sworn brothers with them. You made such a great reputation for chivalry in the Jianghu. Don't you want to use this reputation to do something? Cheng Buhui and the others were all born in the wilderness, so they understand the sadness of the people at the bottom of the Jianghu. But you are a son of an aristocratic family. Why do you have so many emotions?" Chu Xiu's words made Dong Xiangyi feel cold all over. He felt as if he had been seen through. In fact, his identity was not a big secret, and he didn't want to hide it. However, Chu Xiu had openly said what he had been thinking about all this time. This made Dong Xiangyi feel horrified. He had never told anyone about these things, so how did Chu Xiu know? Dong Xiangyi took a deep breath and said, "Then what do you mean now? Do you want to tell my big brother all these things and sow discord between us? But I'm afraid you've got the wrong idea. We have been friends for many years. Even if you say this to others, it will be useless. I want to see if they will believe you, an enemy with ulterior motives, or me." Chu Xiu shook his head. "No, you're wrong. I'm not trying to provoke Cheng Buji and the rest, but you. Dong Xiangyi, you want to make a name for yourself in Jianghu with the help of the 5 swordsmen of Jiangdong, turning them into the 5 swordsmen of Eastern Qi, or even a hero praised by the whole Jianghu like Chu Kuanga, with supreme glory and fame. At that time, you would be able to openly return to the Dong clan, and you might even be invited back to the Dong clan in person. Unfortunately, you didn't realize that your calculations were wrong. The 5 heroes of Jiangdong are a group. When outsiders mention you, they will only say that you are the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Specifically, that person is Cheng Buji, the boss of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, not you, Dong Xiangyi. Think about it, all the people and incidents that you've encountered along the way were led by Cheng Buhui. He's the founder of the River East's 5 heroes and the most famous one among them. In the end, the world only knows him as Cheng Buhui, and no matter how strong you are, you're just one of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. You're just a foil, no different from the other 3. Chu Xiu's words were like a sharp knife. Every sentence stabbed into his heart, forcing him to face up to these things. However, he sadly found that everything Chu Xiu said was true. People in Jianghu only knew the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, and they only knew Cheng Buhui. If he reported his name outside, and Cheng Buhui said that he was Cheng Buhui, the other party would suddenly understand and say, "Oh, it's Master Cheng, one of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong." However, if Dong Xiangyi reported his name outside, the other party would be confused. If he mentioned the 5 heroes of Jiangdong again, the other party would suddenly realize that he was one of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Yes, he was just one of them. The 5 heroes of Jiangdong belonged to Cheng Buhui, and Cheng Buhui represented the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. As for Dong Xiangyi, he could only be one of them, because only one representative was needed. There was no need for a second one. Chu Xiu said slowly, "Dong Xiangyi, I heard that when you became sworn brothers, you learned the righteous manner? Have you ever thought that the 5 people of the righteous manner were indeed famous in Jianghu when they became sworn brothers? It's also a story that has been passed down for decades. But think about it carefully. What were the names of the other 4 people in the righteous manner? You can't figure it out, right? I believe that you're not the only one who doesn't know. 99% of the people in Jianghu don't know. They only remember one person, and that is the master of the righteous manner, the universe-flipping hand, Niren Long. No matter how many people gather, only those who walk to the end can become famous in Jianghu. The so-called reputation can only be effective on one person. As long as Cheng Buhui is here, you'll never be able to stand out in this life." After saying that, Chu Xiu turned around and left, leaving Dong Xiangyi standing there with a gloomy expression. He was extremely conflicted. He knew that everything Chu Xiu said was to sow discord. He wanted to make the 5 of them hate each other and make them fight among themselves. Since he couldn't defeat them head-on, he had to play these tricks secretly. But the problem was that a fly never bites a seamless egg. Since there was a loophole in his plan, he couldn't blame Chu Xiu for targeting him. Dong Xiangyi knew all this. He wanted to be more open-minded, but Chu Xiu's last sentence lingered in his ears from time to time. As long as Cheng Buhui is here, you'll never be able to stand out in this life. He returned to the campsite in a daze. Cheng Buhui saw that his face was a little pale. He couldn't help but ask, "Second brother, what's wrong with you?" Dong Xiangyi shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "I'm fine. I just feel a little uncomfortable because I haven't taken a bath for such a long time." Cheng Buhui shook his head helplessly and said, "As a son of an aristocratic family, you should change your ordinary habits. We don't have to be so pretentious in Jianghu." Cheng Buhui didn't know Dong Xiangyi's real identity, but he also guessed that Dong Xiangyi was from an aristocratic family. This could be seen from Dong Xiangyi's behavior. However, Cheng Buhui didn't care. Since they had become sworn brothers, they were all brothers. It didn't matter where they came from. Anyway, as long as everyone had chivalry in their hearts, it was fine. However, Cheng Buhui didn't notice that 2 people didn't sleep well that night. One was Wu Tiandong, and the other was Dong Xiangyi. The next morning, LV Tong got up early to fetch water from the stream. Cheng Buhui and the others didn't worry. LV Tong's sword was the fastest among the 5 of them, and his movement technique was also the fastest. Therefore, even if he couldn't defeat Chu Xiu, he wasn't afraid of Chu Xiu's sneak attack. Carrying the water bag to the stream, LV Tong fetched water expressionlessly. However, at this moment, the water bag in his hand suddenly paused. His aura, which was originally restrained, was instantly filled with murderous intent. This was because he saw a person in the reflection of the water. A person wearing black clothes, a black iron bamboo hat, and a simple black iron mask was standing on a tree and looking at him. LV Tong was very familiar with this outfit because he used to wear it for more than 10 years. In his countless nightmares, there was a person wearing a black iron bamboo hat and a black iron mask, looking at him with hollow eyes and wanting to take him back to the place he didn't want to go back to in this life. Don't get too excited. Speaking of which, you and I are in the same boat. We're both killers who betrayed the Blue Dragon Society. Don't show your weapons when we meet. Let's catch up, okay? Chu Xiu put away his bamboo hat and mask and looked at LV Tong with a warm smile. Each of the 5 heroes of the River East had a different identity. LV Tong's origin was actually the most interesting because he was also a killer of the Blue Dragon Society. Furthermore, he wasn't like the Ghostly Hand King and the others, who had followed the normal procedure and paid the price before leaving the Azure Dragon Society. Like Chu Xiu, he had betrayed the Azure Dragon Society. However, he wasn't strong when he betrayed the society, so he wasn't hunted down on a large scale. Only one branch was hunting him down. Moreover, the people of the Blue Dragon Society didn't expect that a killer whose hands were stained with blood would actually become the 5 heroes of the River East. Therefore, after so many years, the people of the Blue Dragon Society didn't discover LV Tong. LV Tong said expressionlessly, "You want to reveal my identity to the Blue Dragon Society and use this to threaten me? You're thinking too much. All these years, I've made countless preparations to deal with the people of the Blue Dragon Society. I'm already very lucky to be able to live until now. If you want to go, then go. When the time comes, I'll take the initiative to leave and not cause trouble for Big Brother and the others. Don't even think about using this to threaten me." Chu Xiu looked at LV Tong with a faint smile. In fact, among the 5 of the 5 heroes of the River East, LV Tong could be said to be the one with the least loopholes. He was from the Blue Dragon Society, and an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society wasn't afraid of death. Even if Chu Xiu threatened him with death, it would be useless. Moreover, LV Tong was saved by Cheng Buhui. When he was on the verge of death when he was chased by the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society, it was Cheng Buhui who saved him and didn't ask about his background. However, ever since that time, LV Tong followed Cheng Buhui and listened to everything he said. It could be said that he was loyal to the point that he would really give up his life for him. An assassin from the Blue Dragon Society didn't know what chivalry meant. Even now, LV Tong didn't understand why Cheng Buhui would disregard his own interests to help others in this world where the strong preyed on the weak. However, this wasn't important because Cheng Buhui told him that as a martial artist, he should be chivalrous. So, he would be chivalrous. As a martial artist, he had to punish evil. Then, he would use the sword that he used to kill for his own interests to aim at those villains. LV Tong didn't understand chivalry and didn't want to do it. Everything he did was for Cheng Buhui. Therefore, he was a person that couldn't be provoked. He didn't even care about the time he had with Lu Qingqing. He didn't feel guilty towards Wu Tiandong because he only cared about Cheng Buhui's feelings. However, people with a perfect mental state didn't exist. Perhaps they existed, but they were probably gods or saints. LV Tong wasn't a saint. He wasn't afraid of death and didn't care about anything. However, Cheng Buhui was a loophole in his mental state. Chapter 299. Chu Xiu looked at LV Tong and shook his head. "I'm not threatening you. I'm a traitor of the Blue Dragon Society. If I go to the Blue Dragon Society and expose you, wouldn't I be looking for trouble? I just want to tell you a secret. A secret that you've done before, a secret that even you don't know about. The secret about your brother, Cheng Buhui." LV Tong didn't want to talk nonsense with Chu Xiu. His hand was already on his sword. However, when he heard that this matter was related to his brother, LV Tong unconsciously let go of his sword. He said coldly, "Don't try to be mysterious. What are you trying to say?" Chu Xiu said slowly, I'm also an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society. I know what an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society is like. Apart from killing people, it's all about cultivation. It's like a knife without any emotions. You've been a member of the Azure Dragon Society longer than I have. Perhaps you've killed more people than you can count. But do you know that one of the people you've killed was the father of your brother? LV Tong couldn't help but tremble. He said in a low voice, Nonsense. I was only at the inner aura stage when I betrayed the Blue Dragon Society. How could I kill my brother's father? Chu Xiu said indifferently, It's true that Cheng Buhui is very strong, but who says that a father has to be stronger than his son? All these years, have you ever heard Cheng Buhui talk about his background? Not even once, right? Because this is something that hurts him. Cheng Buhui was born in the Songyang Prefecture of Eastern Qi's Songyang Prefecture's Hegemon Sword Villa. Although the name sounds domineering, it's actually just a small villa with a few dozen people. The villa master, Cheng Nanhai, is only at the inner aura stage. When you received the mission to kill Cheng Nanhai, Cheng Buhui was roaming the world. He was Cheng Nanhai's only son, and he was also the most talented disciple in the Hegemon Sword Villa over the years. Cheng Nanhai couldn't bear to let him waste his life in the Hegemon Sword Villa, so he let him roam the world. In the end, by the time Cheng Buhui returned to the Hegemon Sword Villa, you and the other assassins had already exterminated the Hegemon Sword Villa. It was because of this that Cheng Buji was motivated to uphold justice and eliminate injustice in the world. Now that I thought about it, I was starting to admire Cheng Buji. If it was anyone else who encountered such a situation, they would have fallen into a demon's dark side. If they were lucky, they would have walked the path of revenge. In the end, Cheng Buhui didn't want others to follow in his footsteps. Instead, he became a chivalrous person. His state of mind was truly admirable. However, the problem was that Cheng Buhui didn't know who killed his entire family. He didn't have the ability to find that person. Now that the enemy was right in front of him, what do you think Cheng Buhui would do if he found out about this? You were the one who personally killed Cheng Nanhai when the Hegemon Sword Villa was destroyed. Do you think Cheng Buhui would let you go out of consideration for his brotherhood and cut all ties with you? Or would he kill you? A ridiculing smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. His figure faded away, leaving behind an expressionless LV Tong, who was standing there expressionlessly, but his heart was in turmoil. The hardest thing to understand in this world was the human heart, and the easiest thing to use was also the human heart. It was extremely easy to kill with a knife, but killing with one's heart was even crueler, even though there wouldn't be blood. The Jiangdong's 5 heroes actually didn't have much enmity with Chu Xiu, but it was a pity that they were stubborn and blocked Chu Xiu's path. Hence, Chu Xiu had no choice but to use all means to get rid of them. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame Qiu Dongmao. If Qiu Dongmao hadn't used the 5 of them, they wouldn't be standing on the opposite side now. However, Chu Xiu's personality had always been like this. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but once he did, he would do it to the extreme. Although the Jiangdong's 5 heroes were a group, each of them had their own thoughts and mental flaws. Chu Xiu had already planted flaws in the hearts of 3 of them, and he was only missing one person. However, this person wasn't Cheng Buhui, but Lu Qingqing. In fact, Chu Xiu really admired Cheng Buhui. He was a true chivalrous person. His family was destroyed, but he didn't lose his sight because of hatred. Instead, he chose to devote himself to Jianghu to serve justice and fulfill his lifelong wish. It could be said that among the 5 of them, only he could be called a true chivalrous person. Dong Xiangyi's chivalrous actions were full of utilitarianism, but LV Tong didn't have any chivalrous intentions in his heart. He just wanted to repay a debt of gratitude. If Cheng Buhui asked him to be chivalrous, he would do it. If Cheng Buhui asked him to become a demon and kill people, he would do the same. As for Wu Tiandong, he was impulsive and childish. He became sworn brothers with Cheng Buhui and the others because he yearned for the so-called chivalrous Jianghu. If he had encountered bandits in the early days, he might have also become a ruthless killer. As for Lu Qingqing, she was just a woman. She didn't have great ambitions, but she was unwilling to submit to fate. Everything she did was just blindly following orders. Therefore, whether it was now or in the original plot, Cheng Bu-hui could be called a true chivalrous person. A true chivalrous person with no flaws in his mental state could be compared to Chu Kuanga. Unfortunately, if one wanted to be a true chivalrous person in Jianghu, chivalrous heart was actually secondary. Strength and power were the most important. Chu Kuanga was able to become a great chivalrous person. The biggest contribution was not his chivalrous heart, but his cultivation that could be regarded as the top among martial arts masters. He had the entire Guanzhong torture room as his backing. Obviously, Cheng Bu-hui did not have these, so his fate would be somewhat miserable. Even without Chu Xiu, it would still be the same. Hidden in the dense forest, Chu Xiu quietly waited for Lu Qingqing's arrival. Dong Xiangyi and the other two had seen Chu Xiu in secret, but none of them said anything about it. Therefore, from Lu Qingqing's point of view, Chu Xiu did not even chase after her, or he did not dare to chase after her. Therefore, she also boldly went to relieve herself. Of course, in the distance, she was accompanied by Wu Tiandong, who had a strange expression on his face. At this moment, Lu Qingqing suddenly felt some movement in front of her. She subconsciously tightened her grip on the long sword in her hand, but she heard a faint voice say, "Ms. Lu, calm down. If I wanted to sneak up on you, you wouldn't be standing now." Lu Qingqing said coldly, "Chu Xiu, you really dared to chase after me. However, you underestimate me. I am indeed no match for you, but we are both in the three-flower realm, so I won't be killed by you in one move." Lu Qingqing's words were not just arrogant. Although she was a woman, her strength was not weak. She was originally from a small family and had some martial arts foundation. After meeting Cheng Bu-hui and the others, Cheng Bu-hui taught her many things about cultivation. Dong Xiangyi, who was from the Jialing Dong family, also taught her some things about the foundation of inner strength. Even LV Tong patiently taught her many killing techniques. She did not know if it was because she already had a relationship with all three of them. After wandering the martial world for so many years, Lu Qingqing had killed many people. At this time, facing Chu Xiu, she did not panic. She immediately prepared to attack and call for help. However, at this time, Chu Xiu said, "Ms. Lu, you don't have to be so sensitive. I have already said that I did not want to sneak up on you. This time, my target is only Qiu Dongmao. In fact, it is very funny. I have no grudge with you Jiangdong's 5 heroes, but in the end, you are opposing each other because of an outsider. Isn't this very ironic? I said that Qiu Dongmao poisoned Qiu Zhenxing, but you don't believe me. Let's not talk about this for now. The key is that you spent so much effort to escort Qiu Dongmao to Glazed Ink City. What are you after? Benefits? Then I can tell you, don't even think about it. Qiu Dongmao can't give you any benefits. The Crown Prince only values his identity as Qiu Zhenxing's illegitimate son and wants to use him to control the Pegasus farm. Now that Qiu Zhenxing is dead, even if the Pegasus farm chooses a new owner, it will not be Qiu Dongmao. Therefore, this person is actually already considered useless. It is already very good that he can guarantee a high position and wealth in his next life. Why do you have to work so hard? Lu Qingqing frowned, but in the end, she did not attack Chu Xiu. This was because Chu Xiu's words had indeed hit the nail on the head. After wandering the martial world with Cheng Bu-hui for so long, Lu Qingqing was still a little tired. After all, she was a woman and did not have as strong a conviction as a man like Cheng Bu-hui. From her behavior, it could be seen that Lu Qingqing wanted to marry a strong man, a man who could give her a sense of security so that she would not have to wander around. At first, this person was Cheng Bu-hui, but then it became Dong Xiangyi. Of course, LV Tong should be an exception. Now Wu Tiandong was pursuing her, but Wu Tiandong was not as good as Cheng Bu-hui and Dong Xiangyi in all aspects except for sincerely treating her well. Therefore, Lu Qingqing was a little resistant and had not yet agreed to Wu Tiandong's request. This time, when she escorted Qiu Dongmao, it really made her think that she could be recruited by the Crown Prince. However, she did not dare to tell others. Cheng Bu-hui hated being someone else's lackey. Even if this person was the Crown Prince, Dong Xiangyi did not want to submit to others. LV Tong, on the other hand, only followed Qing Buhui. He would do whatever Qing Buhui asked him to do. Therefore, Lu Qingqing told this matter to Wu Tiandong. Unfortunately, Wu Tiandong was a guy who did not have any far-reaching ideas. He only knew how to follow what others said. He had to listen to Qing Buhui on this kind of matter. Looking at Lu Qingqing's expression, Chu Xiu knew that he was right. This was because Lu Qingqing was such a person in the original plot. In the end, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I'm trying to sow discord and recruit you. You can't rely on the crown prince, but I can introduce you to the second prince of Eastern Qi. Although this prince is not as prominent as the crown prince, he is more capable and famous than the crown prince. You don't have to be in a hurry to answer me now. I have no grudge against the 5 heroes of Jiangdong, so I will give you some time. This is also the last chance. I hope you can grasp it." After saying that, Chu Xiu immediately left. Lu Qingqing, who was still standing there, even forgot that she had to go to the bathroom. Her expression kept changing, and it was only when Wu Tiandong shouted at her that Lu Qingqing realized what she was going to do. Chapter 300. Cheng Buhui leaned against a tree and wiped the heavy sword in his hand. This heavy sword was an heirloom of the Hegemon Sword Villa and was called Light Mountain. It was also the only 5th transformation precious weapon in the Hegemon Sword Villa. When he went out to roam the Jianghu, his father gave this sword to him and asked him to roam the Jianghu with it. Later on, when Cheng Buhui exterminated a Jianghu villain, he found a piece of Xianyuan heavy iron. This thing had no other use other than being hard and heavy. A piece the size of a fingernail weighed a few kilograms. Cheng Buhui found a master refiner to integrate this piece of Xianyuan heavy iron into Light Mountain, turning it from a 5th transformation precious weapon to a 6th transformation precious weapon. This sword had accompanied him since he was young. Although the Hegemon Sword Villa was gone and his father had died, as long as Qingyu was around, he felt that these people were still alive, watching him carry out chivalrous deeds, fulfilling the ideals and revenge that he had in the past. After wiping the sword in his hand, Cheng Buhui looked at the sky. Although the thick fog in the forest was a little thick, it was already slightly bright. He was just about to call for everyone to set off. After a few more days of walking, they would be able to reach Black Glazed City. However, looking at everyone's condition, Cheng Buhui frowned slightly. He was actually not a very meticulous person, but rather a little rough. However, being rough was not the same as being stupid. He could clearly feel that something was wrong with everyone during this period of time. Each of them seemed to be preoccupied and absent-minded. It was fine if others were like this, but his second brother, Dong Xiangyi, had always been very thoughtful and did not like to communicate with others. Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing were not always together, so it was possible for them to quarrel. However, LV Tong had always been cold and indifferent all these years. No matter what happened, he was always calm as if his heart was as still as water. He had not changed at all over the years. But now, LV Tong always showed a look of wanting to say something to him, as if he had something to ask him. However, LV Tong did not open his mouth every time. Cheng Buhui was considerate and asked back, but LV Tong always said that he was fine. This strange atmosphere made Cheng Buhui very uncomfortable. He tied the heavy sword behind him again and sighed. Recently, he had been feeling a little uneasy. He had seen Chu Xiu's behavior in the inn. He was definitely the kind of person who would not give up until he achieved his goal. However, several days had passed, and Chu Xiu still hadn't shown up. It was as if what he had said to them in the inn was just to save his face. This was very abnormal. Cheng Buhui had heard a little about Chu Xiu's character. After all, he was already in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, and had some fame in the northern Yan and eastern Qi regions. From the description on the Longhu leaderboard, it was not difficult to see that Chu Xiu was a resolute and decisive person. However, his negative side was that he had changed a lot. He was a ruthless and cruel person. When he was an assassin in the Blue Dragon Society, his hands were already stained with blood. Later on, when he joined the Guanzhong torture room, he also killed many people in the Guanzhong region. Moreover, During the God Weapon Conference, he killed without any scruples. Those who fell into his hands were either dead or crippled. Only Yen Tingting was safe and sound. However, that was also because the Jixia Martial Arts Academy's Grand Chancellor, Xiao Baiyu, had intervened and saved Yen Tingting's life. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for her to escape death. Cheng Buhui did not believe that such a person would leave after just one exchange of blows with them after saying those harsh words. Therefore, the more time passed, the more anxious he became. Cheng Buhui even hoped that Chu Xiu would sneak attack them along the way and try his best to kill Qiu Dongmao. That would be normal. After letting out a long sigh, Cheng Buhui cleared his mind. Recently, he seemed to be a little paranoid. After all, Chu Xiu was a member of the Guanzhong torture room. If he received news from the Guanzhong torture room halfway, he might have something urgent to deal with. Therefore, it was normal that he would not be able to kill them in time. Therefore, Cheng Buhui said, "Pack your things. We are leaving. We will reach Black Glaze City in a few days. When we get there, we will rest for a while. Second brother, you can also take a good bath." Cheng Buhui's joke did not make Dong Xiangyi laugh. He only twitched the corner of his mouth and forced himself to deal with it. Just as Cheng Buhui was about to say something, a black figure walked out from the fog and said in a mocking tone, "Great hero Cheng, I've said it before in the inn. This matter isn't over yet. The real show hasn't begun. Black Stain City, you won't be able to reach it in this lifetime." Seeing Chu Xiu's figure, Cheng Buji's expression changed. He pulled out the heavy sword on his back and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, it seems like you've run out of patience. You haven't fought a single time during this period of time, so you should know that you can't defeat the 5 of us by yourself. There's no point in forcing a battle." Stuff. A strange expression appeared on Chu Xiu's face. He said, "The 5 of us? Hero Cheng, you treat them as brothers, but I'm afraid they do not want to be brothers with you. Are you curious why I did not fight all this time? Actually, I did. If you don't believe me, you can ask your brothers and sisters. Which one of them has not seen me before? Also, someone has promised to be my spy in the dark, because I can give him far more than you, the big brother. Do you believe me?" As soon as he said that, Cheng Buhui subconsciously turned his head to look at the other 4 people. Their expressions changed as well. Cheng Buhui's heart sank when he saw this. "Is what Chu Xiu said true?" Cheng Buhui asked in a low voice. Without waiting for a few people to speak, Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Everyone, you'd better not lie. Otherwise, I don't mind repeating what I've said to you all before to everyone again. I gave you a chance, and this is your last chance. Hand over Qiu Dongmao, and you will still be the 5 heroes of River East. Otherwise, you should know what awaits you. Don't forget, one of you already has my men. I may not be able to defeat 5 of you, but what about 2 of you? The person hiding in the dark is even more lethal than me." Chu Xiu's words caused the expressions of the 4 people present to change. They did not know what Chu Xiu had said to the others, but they knew that Chu Xiu had grasped their deepest secrets. Only God knew where Chu Xiu had found out about them. They all thought that they would not agree to be Chu Xiu's spy, but what about the others? Dong Xiangyi was utilitarian, so he thought that the others were also utilitarian. If Chu Xiu tempted them with benefits, would the others agree? LV Tong felt guilty towards Cheng Buhui, so he thought that the others also had all kinds of dark secrets. If Chu Xiu used this as a threat, he would rather die than compromise. Did the others have the same thoughts? There was also Wu Tiandong. The others had relationships with Lu Qingqing, but they had hidden it from him. This had already made Wu Tiandong resentful, but he did not want to lose Lu Qingqing, so he had kept it to himself. Among them, Lu Qingqing had the most complicated feelings. Previously, Chu Xiu had tempted her with the second prince to make her think about it. In the end, before she had even thought about it, Chu Xiu said that someone had already agreed. Who was this person? So should she agree or not? The 4 people all had complicated and suspicious expressions on their faces, and did not speak. Seeing this scene, Cheng Buhui's eyes revealed a look of disbelief. The brothers and sisters who had been friends with him for several years, or even 10 years, had actually met with Chu Xiu behind his back and had a secret discussion. Moreover, one of them had even become a spy. This was something that Cheng Buhui did not dare to believe and was unwilling to believe. However, the expressions of these people indicated that Chu Xiu was not lying. Chu Xiu stretched out a finger and shook it. I've said it before, there's only one chance. Qiu Dong Mao, are you going to hand it over or not? Qiu Dong Mao hid behind the 5 people, and his expression was extremely terrified. He never thought that Chu Xiu would play such a trick and use so many tricks in secret to forcibly split the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Although they were all standing together now, it was inevitable that they would split up. Other than Cheng Buhui, the other 4 people were secretly guessing who had agreed to Chu Xiu's conditions and become his spy. Only Cheng Buhui did not suspect them. It was not that he really believed these 4 people, but he did not dare to suspect them. If he, the big brother, questioned the others, then the 5 heroes of Jiangdong would really be finished. Cheng Buhui closed his eyes and only opened them after a while. His eyes were shining with determination. Qiu Dong Mao is my benefactor's son. Since we've agreed to send him to Glazed Ink City, we won't hand him over. Moreover, I don't believe that my sworn brother would betray me. The 5 heroes of Jiangdong have been one body since the day they became sworn brothers, and it's still the same now. Chu Xiu shook his head. I've given you a chance, but you didn't grasp it. Don't blame me for what happens next. As soon as he finished speaking, the demonic aura around Chu Xiu skyrocketed. The dense demonic aura on the heavenly demon dance condensed into a blurry silhouette of a demon god. As Chu Xiu slashed out with his saber, an extreme demonic aura exploded. However, within this demonic aura, there was a hint of divinity. The devil's saber of Avicii would fall forever. As soon as he made his move, Chu Xiu slashed out with the last strike of the 3 sabers of Avicii. It was a demonic saber that could be described as the ultimate judgment of purgatory. The pure demonic aura could even affect the opponent's mind. Cheng Buhui's eyes revealed a hint of seriousness. Among them, he was the strongest and had the most experience in battle. He had even fought against experts in the oneness of heaven and man realm. However, Chu Xiu's saber still gave him a strong sense of pressure, causing his expression to change. Cheng Buhui held his light sword in his hand and raised it as if it was 1,000 caddies. The earth energy in his body was restrained, and when the sword fell, it suppressed the mountain and filled the sea. Chapter 301. The backlash from the 3 strokes of Avicii was too great. With Chu Xiu's current strength, he could basically use the first 2 strokes to his heart's content. However, the last stroke would still cause a considerable backlash. The powerful demonic saber collided with Cheng Buhui's heavy sword, and a shocking power instantly erupted. The earth energy fluctuations even made weaker martial artists like Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing shudder with fear. Under the collision, the ground beneath Chu Xiu and Cheng Buhui's feet was filled with holes and cracks from the impact of the earth energy, but neither of them retreated. Looking at Chu Xiu, Cheng Buhui's eyes revealed a hint of seriousness. Chu Xiu's strength was far greater than he had imagined. His martial path focused on strength, and those of the same level who could withstand a blow from his heavy sword could be counted on one hand. However, not only had Chu Xiu managed to block it, but he could even rely on pure strength to clash head-on with him. This was already shocking enough. Moreover, looking at Chu Xiu's martial path, it was obvious that he did not rely on brute force. Cheng Buhui raised his heavy sword, and after a series of slashes, the powerful might made people shudder with fear. However, Chu Xiu relied on the strength of his 3 strokes of Avicii and the powerful explosive power of the fast and slow 9 words formula to temporarily fight evenly with Cheng Buhui. Dong Xiangyi and the others frowned and simultaneously attacked Chu Xiu. Fighting 5 against 1, although they managed to suppress Chu Xiu in an instant, the more they fought, the more they felt that something was wrong. Originally, the 5 of them had joined forces to roam the pugilistic world, and their tacit understanding between each other was very high. However, now their attacks were very awkward. Cheng Buhui had just sent Chu Xiu flying with his sword, and Dong Xiangyi and LV Tong, who were the most lethal, should have joined forces to receive Cheng Buhui's attack. However, The two of them had held back when they attacked, guarding against each other, and even using their mental power to guard against Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing behind them. Because of this, the rhythm of the two of them was not right. It was not even as good as when the two of them had attacked Chu Xiu in the inn. Now, the two of them had been caught by Chu Xiu, and he directly used the Wisdom Fist seal to seal the space. The Devil Blade of Avicii blasted out continuously, forcing the two of them to retreat. Originally, Cheng Buhui could be evenly matched with Chu Xiu in a one-on-one fight. However, now that the five of them had attacked together, they were forced into a corner by Chu Xiu. The reason was that suspicion and cracks had actually appeared among the five of them. To be precise, four of them did not trust each other. Cheng Buhui, on the other hand, had the courage to trust the others. He believed that his sworn brother would not secretly attack him, but the others did not have the courage to believe that there was no one who would seek refuge with Chu Xiu. After all, the things that Chu Xiu had said to them had already shaken their state of mind. Now that Chu Xiu had said these words, no one could be sure whether anyone had agreed to be a mole for Chu Xiu. Therefore, if someone really became a mole for Chu Xiu and betrayed them by launching a sneak attack while they were fighting fiercely, they would almost certainly die. No one was willing to gamble with their lives. Dong Xiangyi and the other three were the same. The five of them worked together to besiege Chu Xiu, but the more they fought, the more aggrieved they became. The more they fought, the more their hands and feet were tied. This made Cheng Buhui frown immediately. He shouted in a low voice, "The four of you, take young Master Qiu and escape first. I'll cover the rear." Dong Xiangyi and the other three looked at each other. They had no choice but to take Qiu Dong Mao and leave. Chu Xiu forced Cheng Buhui to retreat with a sinister slash filled with demonic qi. He smiled and said, "Cheng Buhui, aren't you afraid that the mole I left among the four of them will attack and kill Qiu Dong Mao?" Alone and with his sword, Cheng Buhui exploded with even more power than before. He even had a trace of an aura that was strong enough to fight against Chu Xiu head-on. "Mole? I don't believe it. Among my sworn brothers, no one is a mole, and no one will betray our former beliefs." Cheng Buhui's tone was firm. He was not affected by Chu Xiu at all. The light sword in his hand was extremely steady. No matter how strong Chu Xiu's blade aura and demonic qi were, they could not break through his defense. Chu Xiu's face revealed a trace of mockery. "Great hero Cheng, you're really magnanimous. You're right to believe them. Even in the hearts of the other four, only you, great hero Cheng, can be trusted unconditionally. Unfortunately, the four of them can't trust each other to the same degree as you." Cheng Buhui's expression changed. To him, he could trust the others, and the others could trust him. But what about the others? Even Cheng Buhui did not dare to guarantee this with 100% certainty. However, Cheng Buhui did not have the time to think so much. He held the light sword in his hand, pushed all the distracting thoughts to the back of his mind, and fought with Chu Xiu with all his might. Chu Xiu was not in a hurry. The best part was yet to come. The secrets and grudges of the five heroes of Jiangdong were enough to make them break up completely. At this time, there was no need for Chu Xiu to fight them head-on. He only needed to add fuel to the fire. On the other side, Dong Xiangyi and the others also left with Qiu Dongmao. However, after running for more than 10 miles, Lu Tong stopped and said, "You guys leave first. I'll go help Big Brother." To Lu Tong, the reputation of the five heroes of Jiangdong was not important. Even Qiu Dongmao was not important. Only Cheng Buhui was important. Although Cheng Buhui could actually fight evenly with Chu Xiu alone, Lu Tong was still worried about Cheng Buhui and wanted to go back to help him. However, at this time, Wu Tiandong frowned and said, "Third brother, Big Brother is completely capable of stopping Chu Xiu. Why are you going back? Do you have an ulterior motive?" Wu Tiandong's words were explosive. He almost said that Lu Tong was a mole, and that he was going back to kill him instead of helping Cheng Buhui. If it was in the past, Wu Tiandong would never say such a thing. However, when he thought about how Lu Tong had a relationship with Lu Qingqing, and that Lu Qingqing was the one who initiated it, Wu Tiandong felt as if he had eaten a fly. He could not help but feel a trace of disgust towards Lu Tong. Moreover, Lu Tong did not have a good relationship with the others. After all, in his heart, only Qing Buhui was the most important. Even the so-called 5 heroes of Jiangdong were not important. Therefore, Lu Tong was cold most of the time. He did not speak much, and he was not very close to the others. Under normal circumstances, this kind of thing would not show. However, at this time, it was as if these things had been suppressed for a long time, and they suddenly erupted. Lu Tong, who was about to leave, turned around and looked straight at Wu Tiandong. He said coldly, "What do you mean? Are you saying that I'm a mole?" Wu Tiandong snorted coldly. "I didn't say that. You said it yourself." A murderous look appeared in Lu Tong's eyes. Cheng Buhui was his reverse scale. Other people could say anything about him, but they could never question his loyalty to Cheng Buhui. A blood-red blade appeared in Lu Tong's hand, and the blood-avoidance sword was already placed on Wu Tiandong's neck. He said coldly, "If you talk nonsense again, I'll kill you." Lu Qingqing hurriedly said, "Third brother, what are you doing? Put down the sword." Dong Xiangyi, who was standing aside, quickly said, "Third brother, stop fooling around. This is not the time to fool around." Lu Tong said coldly, "I'm not fooling around. You should know what exactly is going on. What did Chu Xiu get on you that made you choose to be his mole?" Dong Xiangyi, if it weren't for Big Brother, how could a down-and-out child like you have such a reputation now? But you're always provoking Big Brother's authority. If it weren't for your age and Big Brother asked the 5 of us to become sworn brothers, do you think you're qualified to be my second brother? Don't think that I don't know what you're scheming. You're the most likely person to be the mole. Dong Xiangyi's expression changed. He snorted coldly and said, "Third brother, are you crazy? Why are you biting me? If I were a mole, I would have taken action just now. How could I have joined forces with you to besiege Chu Xiu?" Lu Tong ignored him. Instead, he stared at Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing and said coldly, "And you too, if it weren't for Big Brother, one of you would just be a fledgling rogue cultivator in Jianghu, and the other would have been sacrificed to marry a good-for-nothing. Now you've betrayed Big Brother and are ungrateful. Even if Big Brother forgives you, my sword will not spare you." There was no fear on Wu Tiandong's face. Instead, he took a step forward and said coldly, "Kill me if you can. Now you're talking as if you're a good person. Why didn't you stand up and refute Chu Xiu's words just now? Do you dare to say that you've never done anything to disappoint Big Brother and everyone else?" Although Wu Tiandong didn't know what Chu Xiu had said to him, it seemed that everyone had their own secrets that they didn't want to reveal. Everyone was the same. How noble could Wu Tiandong be? What right did he have to criticize others? At the moment, the 4 of them had their own thoughts. It could be said that the brotherly relationship in the past had been completely torn apart. They were all full of contradictions and distrust. Moreover, Cheng Buhui was not here at the moment, so no one could suppress them at all. Qiu Dongmao, who was behind them, wanted to dissuade them, but unfortunately, he didn't say anything in the end. Qiu Dongmao was a man with good judgment. At the moment, the 5 heroes of River East were full of hostility. They had simply changed from brothers to enemies. What could he do? If he spoke rashly, it was very likely that even he would be implicated. Qiu Dongmao could also see that among the 5 heroes of River East, only Cheng Buhui really wanted to repay his kindness and send him to Black Glaze City. But now that Cheng Buhui was not here, it was better for him to keep a low profile for the time being. Chapter 302. Just as Dong Xiangyi and the other 3 were about to fight amongst themselves, Cheng Buhui was still fighting with Chu Xiu. However, the more he fought, the more shocked he became. In reality, the 2 of them had yet to go all out. Cheng Buhui only wanted to stop Chu Xiu so that the other 4 could escape. Meanwhile, Chu Xiu did not want to go all out either because there was no need for him to. There was already a rift between the Jiangdong's 5 heroes. What Chu Xiu needed to do now was to add fuel to the fire and make it burn even more intensely. There was no need for him to fight Cheng Buhui to the death. Therefore, when Chu Xiu fought with Cheng Buhui, Rather than saying that he was fighting with Cheng Buhui, it would be more accurate to say that he was using this opportunity to train his own realm, allowing him to break through to the 5 Qis unifications. Realm did not equate to combat power. This was a publicly acknowledged fact in the underworld. Realm was easy to determine, but combat power was very complicated. It was related to the martial arts and techniques that one cultivated, or the external environment and one's entire being. Therefore, there was no way to distinguish them in detail. However, to most of the martial artists in the underworld, their combat power was not as good as their realm. Only a freak like Chu Xiu would always have a combat power that was above his realm at every stage. Therefore, he needed to polish his current realm and comprehend the next realm. On the other hand, Cheng Buhui's strength was almost at the peak of the 5 Qis collecting in spirit. He only needed an opportunity to achieve the integration of heaven and man. If Cheng Buhui had chosen to rely on a force earlier and obtained powerful resources, he might have been able to step into this realm a long time ago. The heavy sword in Cheng Buhui's hand slashed out consecutively. There was no aura released from the blade of the sword, but the inner force of this power crushed everything else. Even Chu Xiu's blood-refined divine shield was unable to resist this extreme power. Sensing that Dong Xiangyi and the rest had escaped far away, Cheng Buhui shouted. An extremely powerful wave erupted from the heavy sword in his hand. The power stacked together like a landslide and sent Chu Xiu flying. He then took the opportunity to escape and regroup with Dong Xiangyi and the rest. Dusting off the dust on his clothes, Chu Xiu looked at Cheng Buhui's back and said, "You're leaving now? The show has only just begun." After Cheng Buhui forced Chu Xiu to retreat, he followed Dong Xiangyi and the others. Cheng Buhui originally thought that they must have escaped far away, but who would have thought that he would see Dong Xiangyi and the others in a state of mutual hostility after walking for more than 10 miles? "What are you doing?" Cheng Buji couldn't help but shout. Dong Xiangyi snorted. "Big brother, third brother is crazy." Everyone looks like Chu Xiu's spy, but he refuses to say what he said to Chu Xiu. LV Tong closed his eyes and said in a low voice, "Big brother, I will never betray you, but we can't let the others live. They have other intentions." Chu Xiu's spy could be 1 or 3. Wu Tiandong snorted. "What makes you say that you won't betray Big brother? If you have the ability, then say it on the spot. What exactly did Chu Xiu say to you to make you so afraid?" LV Tong clenched his teeth and did not speak. He would not betray Cheng Buhui, but he really did not dare to say what Chu Xiu told him. At this moment, Chu Xiu's voice came from behind. "I can testify to this. LV Tong did not betray Cheng Buhui, and he is not my spy. It's because he feels guilty towards you, great hero Cheng." LV Tong's eyes widened. He pointed his sword at Chu Xiu and shouted, "Shut up." The corners of Chu Xiu's mouth curled into a smile, but in LV Tong's eyes, that smile was extremely evil. "Great hero Cheng, the people who did the extermination of the Hegemon Sword Villa were from the Blue Dragon Society. As for the person who instigated the Blue Dragon Society, you have not been able to find out. However, the person who killed your father is right in front of you. Your third brother is an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society. The person who beheaded your father, Cheng Nanhai, was LV Tong." As soon as he said that, everyone present was stunned. This news was really explosive, so much so that no one present could react. The person who had been a brother for 10 years actually became the person who killed his father in the blink of an eye. This change stunned Cheng Buhui, and his eyes revealed a look of disbelief. "Is what Chu Xiu said true?" Cheng Buhui looked at LV Tong and asked in a hoarse voice. LV Tong's eyes revealed a look of pain. He wanted to deny it, but in the end he still nodded. At this moment, Wu Tiandong suddenly said, "Just now, you said that we were all spies, but in the end, you became the murderer who killed Big Brother's father. Do you still want to kill Big Brother now?" "Shut up," LV Tong shouted, and there was a trace of killing intent in his eyes as he looked at Wu Tiandong. Chu Xiu clapped his hands and said, "Don't mind him. It's normal for your fourth brother to be angry. He pursued a woman for so many years, but in the end she had an affair with all of you. Everyone in the Jiangdong 5 heroes knows about this, except for him. When did any of you ever treat him as a brother? It's normal for him to harbor resentment. Lu Qingqing's face immediately revealed a look of shame and indignation. She was a woman after all, and she had taken the initiative to do those things in the past. However, knowing it herself and having it revealed to Chu Xiu were two completely different concepts. Wu Tiandong's face was red, and his eyes revealed a trace of humiliation and hatred. When Chu Xiu didn't say it before, he could still play dumb. However, now that Chu Xiu had revealed everything, he couldn't even play dumb anymore. When he thought of how he used to flatter Lu Qingqing and how the other three had seen it, he was probably no different from an idiot in their hearts. The more Wu Tiandong thought about it, the angrier he became. He pointed at Cheng Buhui and said sternly, "Big brother, I've respected you as a father all these years. When I was pursuing fifth sister, if you said she was your woman, how could I have any improper thoughts about her? In the end, all of you knew, but none of you said it. In your eyes, do you still treat me, Wu Tiandong, as a brother? Do you all think I'm an idiot?" Cheng Buhui's expression changed slightly. In fact, he really hadn't thought about it that way. In his opinion, what happened in the past was a misunderstanding. People in the pugilistic world didn't care about trifles, and he had never thought about marrying Lu Qingqing. Later, Wu Tiandong fell in love with Lu Qingqing. Could he really tell Wu Tiandong that Lu Qingqing was his woman, and also Dong Xiangyi and LV Tong's woman? If that was the case, the five of them would have broken up long ago. For Dong Xiangyi and LV Tong, they didn't say it because they didn't care about it at all. It was that simple. And you, Lu Qingqing, am I no different from an idiot in your eyes? Wu Tiandong pointed at Lu Qingqing and shouted. One had to know that he had never raised his voice to Lu Qingqing before. A trace of anger appeared on Lu Qingqing's face. In fact, she really didn't care about Wu Tiandong from the beginning, including Wu Tiandong's confession of love. She actually rejected it. After all, compared to Cheng Buhui and Dong Xiangyi, the gap between Wu Tiandong and them was too big. She subconsciously resisted it. Later, when Lu Qingqing realized that it was really impossible for her to be with Cheng Buhui and Dong Xiangyi, she began to try to accept Wu Tiandong. In the end, such a thing happened. But she didn't think that she had wronged Wu Tiandong, because until now, she hadn't promised him anything. Dong Xiangyi frowned and said, "Fourth brother, love between a man and a woman is just a small matter. Are you going to fall out with Big Brother and us because of this small matter?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That's right. Love between a man and a woman is just a small matter. Fighting for power is a big matter. Dong Xiangyi, I told you before that you want to make a name for yourself with the help of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong and then return to the jailing Dong family openly. But as long as Cheng Buhui is alive, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will always be synonymous with Cheng Buhui. You, Dong Xiangyi, are just one of the 5 heroes of Jiangdong and will never be able to stand out. Why don't you join forces with me now? I'll help you get rid of Cheng Buhui and the others, and I'll bear the blame for you. From now on, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will respect you, and the reputation that Cheng Buhui and the others left behind will all belong to you." Seeing that Cheng Buhui and the others were looking at him, Dong Xiangyi shouted, "Nonsense! When did I want to fight for power with Big Brother? With the 5 of us, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will be the 5 heroes of Jiangdong. Without Big Brother, the 5 heroes of Jiangdong will really be gone." Among the people present, Dong Xiangyi was actually the least afraid of Chu Xiu, because Chu Xiu had indeed said what he was thinking. That was true, but it was also just his thought, and there was no direct evidence, so he could completely deny it. In fact, when he denied it, Dong Xiangyi was really tempted for a moment, but it was only for a moment before he completely extinguished it. Humans were not plants, so how could they be emotionless? Dong Xiangyi was indeed a little utilitarian, including his so-called chivalrous deeds. But after all, he had been sworn brothers with Cheng Buhui for so many years, and he knew what kind of person Cheng Buhui was. No matter how utilitarian he was, he could not join forces with Chu Xiu to kill his former big brother, even if he really wanted the reputation that Cheng Buhui had. However, at this time, Cheng Buhui and the others looked at Dong Xiangyi with a somewhat complicated gaze. No one was an idiot. They all knew that Dong Xiangyi used to be very calculative and utilitarian, but they did not expect that Dong Xiangyi would want so many things. At this time, when Chu Xiu said all these, Qing Buhui and the others thought of the little things that Dong Xiangyi used to get along with him. Indeed, sometimes Dong Xiangyi would steal Qing Buhui's limelight, but at that time, they did not care. Because Cheng Buhui did not care about fame, the others did not say anything, but now it seemed that Dong Xiangyi had some other intentions since they became sworn brothers. Chapter 303. Under Chu Xiu's incessant provocation, the rift between the Jiangdong's 5 heroes was getting bigger and bigger. Even Qiu Dong Mao, who was at the back, was shocked when he heard that. In Eastern Qi, the Jiangdong's 5 heroes were quite famous, and all of them were positive. Some people even claimed that if one of the Jiangdong's 5 heroes could step into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm and combine with the connections that the Jiangdong's 5 heroes had accumulated over the years, it would become a community of Eastern Qi. Unfortunately, the people in Jianghu would not live to see that day. Every word that Chu Xiu said was like the tip of a knife, stabbing into the hearts of the people present. The rift could no longer be mended. At this time, LV Tong closed his eyes. He seemed to have mentally prepared himself for something and said to Cheng Buji in a decisive tone, "Big brother, you saved my life. When I was in the Blue Dragon Society, I never felt like a human. I only regarded myself as a sword, a killing machine without feelings. It was not until I met you that I knew what a human was. The Hegemon Sword Villa was destroyed by the Azure Dragon Society, and your father was also killed by me. Chu Xiu wasn't wrong about this. Since it has happened, I can only compensate with my life. I can also help you get rid of all the obstacles behind you before committing suicide. In the next life, we will be brothers again." As soon as he finished speaking, the blood-avoidant sword in LV Tong's hand emitted a hazy blood-red light. Even half of his body was dyed blood-red. LV Tong chose to burn his blood essence as soon as he arrived. What shocked everyone was that LV Tong did not attack Chu Xiu. Instead, he chose to kill Dong Xiangyi with his sword. Only then did everyone understand what LV Tong meant by the obstacle. The obstacle was not Chu Xiu, but Dong Xiangyi. LV Tong was an extreme and stubborn person. Sometimes, even Cheng Buji could not stop him. In LV Tong's opinion, Dong Xiangyi was not a mole and was ready to die. Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing were weak, so it did not matter even if they were moles. Moreover, after this incident, they would no longer have anything to do with the Jiangdong's 5 heroes. Therefore, from this perspective, Dong Xiangyi, whose ambition had been exposed by Chu Xiu, was the biggest threat to Cheng Buji. Moreover, Dong Xiangyi had previously revealed his restlessness and ambition. At that moment, LV Tong had made a decision to kill Dong Xiangyi. If Dong Xiangyi died, it would be fine, but if he did not, he would commit suicide on the spot and give his life to his brother. Cheng Buji's expression suddenly changed when he saw this, and he shouted, "No!" Unfortunately, Lu Tong was a stubborn man. Once he made up his mind, even Cheng Buhui could not persuade him, let alone Lu Tong, who was ready to die. Cheng Dong Xiu and wanted to stop LV Tong. To be honest, Cheng Buji did have mixed feelings when he found out that LV Tong was the person who killed his father. However, Cheng Buji was broad-minded. He quickly figured out the crux of the matter. The Blue Dragon Society was an assassin organization. All the assassins in the Blue Dragon Society were their employers' swords and knives. They were emotionless killing machines. His real enemy was the person who hired the Blue Dragon Society to kill him, not LV Tong. Even if LV Tong did not make a move, the Blue Dragon Society would have sent other assassins to destroy his Hegemon Sword Villa. Therefore, this could only be a coincidence and a misunderstanding. However, Cheng Buji had accepted it, but LV Tong did not. He wanted to use his own life to kill Cheng Buji. Why did he have to do that? However, just as Cheng Buhui was about to make a move, Chu Xiu's figure had already appeared in front of Cheng Buhui. He said expressionlessly, "Great hero Cheng, the show has just begun. I can't let you interrupt it. Right now, your opponent is me. Get lost." Cheng Buji yelled. His eyes were bloodshot. His killing intent was surging. He had made an enemy of Chu Xiu to protect Qiu Dongmao. To put it in a more grandiose way, it was for his own beliefs. Now, he really wanted to kill Chu Xiu. After Chu Xiu's words, the Jiangdong 5 heroes had completely broken off. Even if they did not die today, they would never be able to go back to the past. Moreover, it was also because of Chu Xiu that his third brother wanted to fight with his second brother. This was something that Cheng Buhui absolutely could not tolerate. Even if Dong Xiangyi was ambitious, Cheng Buji did not want to lose the brotherly relationship between them as long as he did not make a move. However, after Chu Xiu's casual words, he caused the brothers to kill each other and completely break off their relationship. At this moment, Cheng Buji really wanted to kill Chu Xiu. The light Yu heavy sword exploded with boundless might, causing a powerful sonic boom to resound through the air. The heavy sword slashed towards Chu Xiu, bringing with it an unparalleled might. In the past, when facing Cheng Buji, Chu Xiu had actually held back a little. However, this time, Chu Xiu also wanted to kill. The show had begun. Since the Jiangdong 5 heroes were determined to stop him, Chu Xiu would not be lenient. In fact, Chu Xiu admired people like Cheng Buji. Unfortunately, he would never be a person like Cheng Buji. Moreover, admiring him didn't mean that Chu Xiu would be merciful. Just as Cheng Buji made his move, Chu Xiu blasted out the Wisdom Fist Seal. It covered heaven and earth and sealed off the space. Cheng Buji's heavy sword struggled to break through the big net of Gangqi created by the Wisdom Fist Seal. However, its speed was extremely slow. At the same time, the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand became extremely evil. The powerful demonic aura merged with the scarlet blood divine power and intertwined with each other. He slashed out a strange and evil devil blade of Avicii. However, this time, Chu Xiu did not use the powerful blade momentum. Instead, he chose to absorb the demonic aura from the devil blade of Avicii into his body. It turned into a strange and evil blade momentum and slashed toward Cheng Buji. During the previous fight, Chu Xiu was not only training his realm, but also familiarizing himself with Cheng Buji's martial arts route. In reality, the martial arts that Cheng Buji grasped were not very strong. Whether it was his inner force or his techniques, they could only be considered ordinary. After all, the hegemon sword villa that he came from was only a small village. All these years, Cheng Buji did not take on a master, nor did he choose to rely on other forces. His strength was obtained through killing in the Jianghu. In a simple and direct manner, he used his strength to break through everything. On the other hand, Chu Xiu's martial arts were much more complicated than Cheng Buji's. It could be said to be strange and ever-changing. When it needed to be overbearing, it would be overbearing. When it needed to be evil, it would naturally be incomparably evil. Before the Buddhist light created by the Wisdom Fist Seal dissipated, Chu Xiu's devil blade of Avicii had already slashed over with blood-colored Gangqi. The blade momentum was strange and ever-changing. When the two combined, it actually gave off an extremely mystical feeling. Cheng Buji's face was filled with murderous intent. The light mountain sword in his hand exploded with a dazzling light. The heavy sword's blade seemed to weigh thousands of kilograms. It was as if he was going head-on against Chu Xiu, disregarding the consumption of his own inner force to fight head-on. Under the so-called pure power, whether it was the Wisdom Fist Seal's spatial seal or the devil chi drawn by the devil blade of Avicii, they all shattered. Under this series of attacks, although Chu Xiu's attacks were all broken, in reality, Cheng Buji was the one who exhausted the most. At this moment, he was also the most anxious because Dong Xiangyi and LV Tong had already started fighting. LV Tong was truly not afraid of death. Or rather, he was already prepared to die for Cheng Buji. Therefore, when he fought with Dong Xiangyi, he used almost all his strength to attack. He actually managed to force Dong Xiangyi, who was stronger than him, to retreat step by step. He did not dare to fight head-on. After all, LV Tong had the will to die, but he, Dong Xiangyi, did not. Dong Xiangyi blocked LV Tong as he shouted, "Fourth brother! Fifth sister! Third brother has gone crazy. Come and help me!" There was a hint of struggle in Wu Tiandong and Lu Qingqing's eyes, but neither of them moved. Wu Tiandong did not move because he was angry with both of them. Now that he saw them fighting to the death, Wu Tiandong even felt a little happy. Naturally, he would not come. Moreover, LV Tong had already started to fight desperately. If he rashly made a move, it was very likely that he would be killed by the angry LV Tong. The same was true for Lu Qingqing. She had already lost enough face today, and she did not want to stand out and embarrass herself at this time. Moreover, even if she was shameless, it would be useless for her to go forward with her strength. Moreover, she thought more than Wu Tiandong. Now that her suspicions had appeared, Chu Xiu had also pointed out Dong Xiangyi's thoughts. Although there was no evidence, it was obvious that Dong Xiangyi was also ambitious. Eldest brother would definitely not kill Dong Xiangyi. Wouldn't it be better to let LV Tong do it now? Not only would he get rid of one person, he could also make the other person bear all the blame, and he would become a tragic hero. This could be said to be killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Of course, in reality, Cheng Buhui's thoughts were not as complicated as Lu Qingqing thought. The only thing he wanted now was to save Dong Xiangyi and calm LV Tong down. Therefore, when Chu Xiu stuck close to him to stop him, Cheng Buhui burned his blood essence in anger. In an instant, the Qingyue was covered by the crimson blood flame. The heavens are vigorous, so a gentleman should constantly strive to improve himself. The earth is koan, so a gentleman should be virtuous. Cheng Buhui's sword momentum was not agile, but only steady and domineering. As the sword fell, Chu Xiu's devil chi suddenly shattered. Before the sword fell to the ground, the entire ground had already been shaken by Cheng Buhui's blow, leaving a deep sword mark. The internal binding seal exploded, and Chu Xiu's figure quickly retreated. However, at this time, Cheng Buhui had already made up his mind to kill Chu Xiu and had even burned his blood essence. How could he let Chu Xiu escape so easily? He spat out a mouthful of blood on his Qingyue, and the dark red blood condensed into a strange rune, causing his Qingyue sword to explode with a tremendous force. As the sword fell, everything around it was drawn by this sword, forming a huge Gangqi storm around Cheng Buhui. This was Cheng Buhui's trump card, and also the martial art technique that he did not want to use the most. It was a secret technique of the devil path, the Kuan symbol sword technique. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.